Good morning, folks. It's 9 o'clock. We'd like to get started. We'll start with the pledge and a prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Gracious Lord, as we begin today, we just ask you to be with us and abide with us and guide and direct us as we conduct the affairs of this county, that the things we say and do would be prosperous to the people and keep them safe. We especially ask that you be with those traveling through our county, that you keep them safe, and most especially those who are employed by the county that are out on the streets and doing the heavy work that needs to be done. And just ask you to be with them and guide and direct them. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You're welcome. It's still 9 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order and entertain a motion for the signing of the claims and minutes.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, first on the agenda is always the Veteran of the Month, our Veteran Service Officer, Darrell McDowell. Come on down. Thank you, gentlemen. You're quite welcome. It's our pleasure.
Good morning to all.
Yeah.
Good
Good
I'd like
morning.
to take the opportunity to recognize the Commissioner's Choice for Veteran of the Month of May. Interesting piece. We have a lot in common that the reason he is back here is because his loving wife
Looks a lot like
is from this county. Okay, and that kind of how I fell in here. She chose this place because she has relatives, and that's the amazing part about this county is that no matter how many depart, a large quantity of them seem to come back just because of the atmosphere. And I'm grateful that you and I can kind of talk throughout the time here to say, hey, you know, what if we'd have gone here or there? But anyway, with that, the veterans, Tim Boone, they live here in Warsaw, U.S. Army veteran. His birthday is in 1945 in April, so he's a young individual. He was born to Arthur and Lillian Boone. He's got 3 siblings. Graduated from, a high school in California, I'll just say, okay? And that's kind of the reason he's here. He spent too much time apparently in California. The amazing piece, and I haven't talked to him in detail on this, is the jobs before his military service, before he raised his right hand. He was an actor, and I'm not sure how that plays out. I'm interested to see for future conversations on that. Maybe we can entertain you up here doing that. Military raised his right hand in October of 1965. Immediately sent to Fort Ord, California. Imagine that. I don't know.
Not Fort Ord.
Yeah, he was. That's what his basic training was, and then he went to Fort Lee, Virginia, for advanced. And then shortly after that, he was sent to Fort Moore, Georgia, for OCS, Officers Candidate School, and a class of 67-2. Graduated in 1966, and naturally his military assignments, Fort Ord, Lee, but the other distinguished ones are areas in Thailand and Vietnam. He was discharged in November of 1976, captain. Service awards, combat infantry badge, I've told you about those. You don't just get those presented, you have to earn them. 2 Bronze Stars, an Air Medal. Air Medal's not a common award. You have to be somewhere riding on helicopters to be able to float with that. And usually the pilots don't let us stay on there very long. They tell you to get off. So I guess a medal is the best they can do for that piece. Meritorious Service, Purple Heart, and then Vietnamese or Vietnam and Thai awards, along with the Master Parachute Badge, which I know the pain of that one. That's why my knees are not as functional as maybe they should be.
Ooh.
But we don't have the Hollywood parachutes. You know, they want us to get out of the plane and get down to the ground quickly. The career after the military, interesting piece here, organizational development and leadership effectiveness consultant and executive coach. Still, in conversations, I can still sense that piece there in his demeanor and his conversations. He's always coaching. Emergency preparedness and planning, emergency medical services, health department, which I found fascinating, and kind of ran over to Kip real quick to say, and introduce him to Kip to kind of see if we could get something going on from there. The hobbies, building and shooting 18th century American long rifle flint locks. Here's one, Sheriff, and if we've got the fire territory, warrior to citizen is some of his volunteer community service when he was in Georgia. If anyone knows about that, that is a program that it really encompassed not only just the military, but our civilian folks, EMT, public safety, et cetera, firefighters that experience trauma, stress during their normal day-to-day activities, and dealing ultimately, because we don't get after it right away, ultimately affects the families. And so that program is to kind of offset that. I know that the sheriff is trying to lead something very similar in his county, Veterans to Veterans, with our CARES program, and trying to put people together, so maybe we can capitalize
Recording
on
in
his
progress.
expertise, okay? He's also the president of the Georgia Tech Alumni Association Military Affinity Group and school governance team in Marietta, Georgia, even though he's here in Indiana. Ladies and gentlemen, the Veteran of the Month, Tim Boone. Okay, with that, the Kosciuszko County awards the Veteran of the Month, Tim Boone, in recognition of his outstanding contributions of the mission and serving the people of the United States. And the residents of Kosciuszko County and the honorable service as a member of the United States Army. We do appreciate all your service. We do appreciate everything you bring to our community after that. We're welcoming, this is a small welcoming to our community. And can't forget the spouse as well. Thank you. Okay.
Just hold this? Okay, good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the honor and privilege of being able to live in Kosciuszko County, thanks to my wife. We discovered her down in Indianapolis a number of years ago. You know, she went off from here. And it's been particularly interesting growing up in California, as you said, but in small town California, all over the place in rural areas, grew up on a ranch and that sort of thing. But coming here in the summertime, we've always come to Steve and Pat's place in the summer, at least every other year, get some nice lake weather or everything up here. And so as we've gotten to know the county over the years, it became more and more our home. When we were living other places, this was coming home. So it only seemed like the appropriate thing to do. This last year, we said, well, we can do this. Let's go do it. This is a real move of choice, is to be here. And looking forward to it. We're enjoying getting to know everybody and in Linda's case, getting to know some people again after several years and just being able to be here. Hope we can contribute in some meaningful way and be part of this county. Thank you very much. And appreciate all that you do as commissioners and looking after us there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. The mic's not on. Thank you for all you do there, Daryl, to coordinate these things, and we certainly appreciate everything you do for our county as well. We'll show a little respect and give them an opportunity to leave the gallery. County Highway Superintendent Steve Moriarty, come on down.
Morning, Steve. Good morning. I have a couple things that I'd like to bring to you today. One is I would like to bring our road program before you. This is for the 2024 season for approval, if I could.
Sure.
Okay. We just got this earlier. It's quite inclusive. A lot of miles and a lot of work you're planning. We entertain a motion for accepting this.
Make a motion to approve the 2024 road program.
Second.
Been moved and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
The Husky Trail project on Bridge number 9 has been ongoing since 2013. We've had, overall, we've had 5 different bids that have came in throughout those years. Finally, we went for federal funding and got funding for that. Currently, or very recently, we got another bid on May 9th of this year for construction. It was significantly over bid. NDOT has agreed to participate 80/20 even in the overage. So the increase in pay for that bridge for total construction would be just shy of $350,000 additional. We have the money in our in the Cume Bridge Fund to cover that. But looking at the inflation of everything that's went on currently throughout these last few years, to us and checking with our engineers, this seems like an adequate price to get this bridge built and to move forward on this project. But I would like to have approval from the county commissioners to move forward with that additional,
350,000.
just shy, yeah.
And the location of that is
Bridge number 9, Husky Trail.
Husky Trail.
Across Deeds Creek.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd make a motion to approve. I know that we've had 4 lettings
Yeah.
on this project to
This
try
is the
to,
fifth.
try and find a contractor, get a number that we're satisfied with. I know NDOT really stepped up to the plate and is paying for 80% of this additional overages. And for us to go back and redesign it at this point would cost the county more than the $350,000
Yes.
that we're having to pony up here, as well as would have to reapply to NDOT. I mean, it would be quite a process, so I'd make the motion that we approve moving forward and awarding it to, or the additional $350,000.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for all you're doing. I know you've put your nose to the grindstone on this one. It's paying, it's finally paying off, so
Been a long process.
take a deep breath.
Take care.
Enjoy the weather. Okay, next on the agenda is cabs. Kristen Rude. Come on down. Good morning, Kristen.
Good
Morning.
morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us out. I'm presenting this morning the Section 5311 first quarter claim and an invoice for 2 new vehicles from the 2024 5339 capital grant request. First, I'll present the 5311 quarterly claim. CAB's first quarter expenses totaled $209,330. The federal operating funds covered $104,665 of that request, while the state operating match covers $52,332. The remaining $52,333 is covered by the applied local match. CABS was also awarded a capital grant through the 5339 funds for two 2025 Ford E450 50-passenger buses. The price per bus is $121,954 for the total of $241,908. The federal match on those is 80%, and the remaining 20% will be covered through the applied local match. The buses are being purchased through Midwest Transit Equipment. CAB seeks your approval to purchase both buses.
Thank you for bringing that in front of us this morning. I know we'll probably need to approve these separately, but I'd make a motion. First, we start with the first quarter claims for NDOT. Make a motion to approve that.
Okay, it's
I'd second that.
been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And I'd also make a motion for the approval of the vehicle purchases. I know that those are bought through a state, they're bid out by the state, so it's just not like you have, so it's a competitive process through that process. And then we get that 80-20 match on that, which is really leverages those capital dollars. So make a motion to approve that as well.
Okay,
Second.
it's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Thank you.
Appreciate your report. Keep
Thank
up the
you.
good work. Kedco, Susie Light. Good morning, Susie.
Morning. Morning, Jody.
I'm going to give this to you in writing, so we all understand exactly what I'm saying.
Oh, we got to that point.
Yeah.
Very good. We always do that. I've already got that, so it's good. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so KEDCO is officially respectfully requesting that the Aban Marsh project contract for County Road 1300 North area be approved with the balance of the encumbered 2023 special projects funds totaling $33,618.75 be used toward this project.
Changed the 8 on us, didn't you?
I know, it was,
Thought we weren't paying attention.
my bifocals weren't in the right place, and I thought it was a 5.
I refused to answer on the grounds it may tend to incriminate me.
And this is out of money that's already been allocated, but you just come to us each time you want to spend some of it, so.
That's correct, and this is from '23.
Okay. You ready for a motion?
Yes.
I would make that motion that we go ahead and approve that.
And I'll second that, I guess clarification. So I know that, we have the funds that we're allocating from last year, or encumbering from last year, those special projects funds. But then also, you'll be coming back for the remainder of those funds for the special projects for 2024, then probably next meeting or sometime
That is correct.
soon.
So in the future, we will be coming requesting 2024 funds.
Right.
To help finish out this
To
project.
finish paying.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation.
Pre-
Oh, you have something?
Well, yes, I do.
No,
They will
yes.
be requesting the 2024 funds less the Van Buren TIF, which the redevelopment commission is allocating 30% of the cost of this project to that study.
Yeah, which is ballpark $10,800 and some dollars.
Correct.
That's good. Thank you.
Good to know. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Did you vote?
Ready? We're getting ready.
Is there a motion?
We already had motions.
Motion a second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susie.
Whew, boy, it was like pulling teeth, wasn't it? Thank you. Next on the agenda is our emergency management agent, Kip Shooter.
Good morning.
Morning,
Dodged
Kev.
some bullets in the
Morning, Kip.
last couple of weeks, haven't we, with the weather going around us? Yeah.
Hopefully that happens tonight,
Yeah.
that we get that same thing.
Yeah.
I'm here before you this morning to bring to you the second side, the enduring needs side to the State Homeland Security Program, grant program. We had to do a quick pivot last week. I had been working with the Sheriff's Department for equipment for them. That wasn't going to work out, so did a quick pivot and was working with Systems Administration, Eric and Bob. And we've been working on a project to get fiber out to our county highway department, where our disaster recovery site will be for our systems. So that if something ever were to happen here, we'd have that backup system there in place to be able to pull our systems and all that information and all that data back up. So we are asking for your permission to apply for this grant for a total amount of $132,432.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to approve the request, grant request.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keep up the good work. Ed Ormsby, our county attorney, is visiting us remotely. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning.
Okay.
First thing that we have is a joint resolution with the county of Elkhart. Sheriff Jim Smith was able to get Elkhart County to donate to Kosciuszko County's Sheriff's Department a canine dog by the name of Corsa. This resolution will allow us to accept that gift at no cost. I'll read the applicable portions of the resolution. Whereas the Board of Commissioners of the County of Kosciuszko, Indiana, and the Board of Commissioners of the County of Elkhart, Indiana, are jointly adopting this resolution to satisfy the requirements of Indiana Code 36-1-11-8, whereas the Board of Commissioners of the County of Elkhart desires to transfer and give the dog Corsa, which is used in Elkhart County for police functions, whereas the Board of Commissioners of the County of Kosciuszko County, Indiana, desires to accept the transfer and gift of Corsa for and on behalf of the Kosciuszko County Sheriff. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of the County of Elkhart hereby transfers and gives to the Board of Commissioners of the County of Kosciuszko the dog Corsa in as-is condition for the use and benefit of the Kosciuszko County Sheriff, with such transfer to be made on or about the 4th day of March 2024. The dog has been transferred and is now in service in Kosciuszko County, and this resolution will ratify that transfer. That is submitted to the commissioners for consideration.
Okay. We have a motion?
Yeah, I've heard don't look a gift horse in the mouth. I guess you'll look a gift dog in the mouth.
There you go.
All right. I'd make a
Okay.
motion.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
Morning, Sheriff.
Good morning. Yeah, just, if I can, just speak to it. Sheriff Siegel had reached out several months back. The handler that they had for the dog, right? So when you get a phone call, hey, do you want this dog? Is like, what's wrong with it, right? So that was the first question. It turns out that there was nothing wrong with the dog. In fact, it's a great dog, been a great asset. The handler got promoted to their detective bureau in the department, which wouldn't allow for him, that detective, to take the dog with him. They had already had a posting for another dog that was, they were trying to find someone. They just don't have the interest up there for people to be a handler. It is quite the commitment and responsibility. So kudos to Sheriff Siegel in Elkhart County. So rather than trying to sell it and make money, he thought to call a neighboring county. So I really, truly appreciate that. And it turned out that it was perfect timing for us. We have one that's due to probably retire maybe at the end of this year due to health and arthritis, a lot of years. And we had another vehicle that was equipped and ready for it, so very minimal expense on our end other than the normal vet and food and that sort of thing, but our budget did support that. So the timing was perfect, and again, I appreciate Elkhart County thinking of us in this time. And Elizabeth Johnson was selected. We opened it up across the department, and anyone who had interest in it, we did our proper interview and selection process. Deputy Johnson was promoted to the position of K-9 handler, and her and the dog have bonded and gone to the proper training, and things are all well. So,
Very good.
thank you. I just wanted to
Good
update you on that.
Thanks, Sheriff.
I just, before we take the vote, say kudos to you. I mean, he thought of you
Right.
when he had this and this dog available, and pat you on the back for that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank
betcha.
you. We're excited.
You bet. No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. And also thank you to the county commissioners up in Elkhart County. I mean, they
Yeah.
also had to sign off on the gifts. So
Right.
I agree.
appreciate the camaraderie. So.
Okey dokey. Do you have anything further? Ed?
Yes, we have one more item, and that is a temporary and permanent easement that the county is giving to NIPSCO to allow them to maintain and repair some utility lines that are running by the Kosciuszko County Highway Department. That easement number is 201188-1. The easements do provide that if NIPSCO disturbs or damages any of the improvements, including but not limited to the fencing area that is near the easement, that NIPSCO will make repairs to those improvements. I would submit both those, the temporary easement and the permanent easement, to the commissioners for consideration and approval.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have a motion?
I'd make a motion we approve that.
I'd second that, but Steve, you've seen where they're gonna impact your property and you're good with everything, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Ed and I have been in contact and walked through.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
very good. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Very good. Thank you, Ed. Do you have anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay, thank you for being here remotely. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
County Clerk Ann Torpy. I don't see Ann here. I know there was a little bit of an election day error on the part of one of their employees that was corrected, and it doesn't affect the vote. It just affects the representatives to the state convention, and I'm sure that is easily worked out. So on her behalf, I'll make that statement. Marsh McSherry is not available today. Rhonda Helser, anything from the auditor's office? Anyone else have business with the commissioners this morning? Hearing none, we'll see you back here. Well, wait a minute, wait a minute. Wait a minute. They went and gave me 2 pages instead of 1. Thought they was gonna mix me up, didn't they? Think they did. Moving right along, area plan, it's 9:15, we can move along. Andrew, good to have you with us, thank you.
Morning, gentlemen. Thank you
morning.
for flipping over that page and not
Yeah,
forgetting.
Brad was getting ready to smack me, so I got,
Yeah, okay.
I felt it coming from both sides, so he's coming.
So the first thing I have to present is a petition to vacate a portion of a public right-of-way. This is in Atwood, between lots 7 and 8 on the original plot of Atwood, also known as Mount Ruska. The Plan Commission recommended to deny with a unanimous 7-0 vote for the following reasons. The neighbor to the west shares the alley. When it's not blocked by parking, they do use it and
Thanks,
do not
Steve.
want it closed. The second reason is that the existing alley acts as a fire break in a very congested area. And the third reason is that the existence of the alley improves the ability of safety services to serve the area.
Okay, very good. Steve?
Thank you. Steve Snyder on behalf of Albert Deckys. Albert owns the property on the east side of this alley, outlined in blue on the aerial photo I presented you. And the issue appears to be, is it in fact used? It doesn't appear to be used. Albert has a security camera on this property, and very seldom is it used. The east-west alley to the north of these properties serves as the main access to the properties themselves, as you can see from the various driveways. Also, as you look at the property at 211 and 217, Both of them are zoning violations. They are almost encroaching into the right-of-way, but at best 0 feet from the right-of-way. This is a manner in which the zoning violation can be resolved because the alley would be divided between those two properties, become a part of those properties, and create a reasonable setback between them and between the lot lines that would be established down the middle of the alley. The fire department is at 110 in the upper right-hand corner. They do not use the alley. They use the east-west alley for access. As you can see from the driveways on the properties to the north, their access is to that east-west alley. The property at 211 actually has the swimming pool on the east side, abutting this alley to be vacated. Their access is either off of Main Street, as shown by the driveway going to their garage, but they also have a gate on the north side providing them access to their rear yard from the east-west alley. The question, of course, is, will the vacation impair access to any other person's property? And I'm suggesting that the access is from the east-west alley or Main Street, and the elimination of this alley won't have any negative effect. Also, if you look north of the east-west alley, you'll see that the alley in that location has already been vacated. Between 212 and 218, that alley no longer exists, and the property lines are down the middle of the vacated alley, which solves some setback problems for the two small structures you see in the lower right-hand corner of 212. Development is complete in this area, so we won't be impeding development, and we're not interfering with access to a church, school, or other public place. As I indicated, the fire department has its access off Prairie Street and the east-west alley. I understand the position taken by the Plan Commission, but I don't agree with it. We can cure some zoning issues here that have been there for decades, and the property, if vacated, would go half to 211, half to 217, increasing the setbacks from the existing structures and preventing any continued interference with a public right-of-way. There was some testimony before the Plan Commission that trucks use this, and Mr. Decky's security camera, which has been there, is an appropriate method to resolve the issue.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your, anyone further here to speak in favor of? Anyone to speak in opposition to? Good morning. Please step to the microphone, please.
Yes, my name's Steve Skis. I live at 211.
Okay.
To the west there. And Dallas has been parking in that driveway for 8 years. We use the driveway. We've never complained because there was no point in it. We use the driveway to access our side gate to the east to get water to our pool and get the septic gentleman in to take care of our septic system. It's agreeable that, you know, you get half of the alley and everything. I just don't want to see somebody come in there and put a gosh plastic fence up down the center of that alley. I mean, that's crazy. It just wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. And then it limits her access to the backyard and, you know, so on. It's, you know, it's been great for ever since before I was born. I've lived in Atwood all my life, so it's like, I don't know. And they brought up that, oh, she has children. Well, that's okay. I understand that, no problem. But afraid somebody would come running up and down the driveway and run over them. Well, You know, how can they? Just use your common sense when they're parked in the driveway. Nobody can come in and out. And
Okay,
basically, that's all I have to say.
okay, so it doesn't really matter to you one way or the other, but you'd rather leave it the way it is?
Yeah,
If
because
you had your
she,
druthers, you'd rather leave it the way it is, so,
just, she
sure.
more than welcome to use it, park there, and
Yeah.
that way, if I
Sounds
want to
like
use
a
it,
good
I
neighbor
can use
policy.
it, or whatever, if they're not there, and then
Sure.
if they are, I can go next door and ask them to move their vehicle if I need to,
Okay,
but
okay.
thank you.
Well, I appreciate your stepping forward. Anyone else here and speak in opposition to? Give us your name, please, and
Hi, Christian Eicher. We are just to the east of 217. And there's a good case made towards vacating the alleyway. There are a lot of violations as far as setbacks. As you see, 221 also has a 0-foot setback. It is the edge of the house. And then 217, they have 0 setback issues. 211 has 0-foot setback issues. I would agree that it does provide a temporary solution to a parking, but I am more interested in a long-term solution. I have talked with Randy from the Highway Department, trying to get on Kerry's radar right there about the right-of-way against Main Street there, because there is a severe drainage issue going on in Atwood that has long since been ignored. The rear alleyway, as you know, is a pole-run drainage ditch. The alleyway running north-south between 211 and 217 may provide a potential drainage finger as another means of taking the water away faster. Currently, when it does rain, it washes a bunch of sand and limestone kind of all over the place there in the front because it's not draining right. In front of 211, there is a drain that is about 10 inches below grade that gets covered up with sand and debris because of all the rushing water. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because if we do get the front right-of-way taken care of, there's a giant tree in front of 217 that's long since messed up the sidewalk. Sidewalk aside, if that's redone and they maintain that swale and do limestone, that does provide an alternative parking. The main reason there's no traffic down that alleyway between 211 and 217 is because I'm aware that they both work third shift, so they're not there in the middle of the night when no one else is driving, but during the day, they're there when everyone else is awake and they can't really use the alleyway. So in the 8 years, I would say, yeah, no one really uses it at night most of the time, a lot less traffic. But again, I'm more interested in a long-term solution as far as parking. As the skis said, it's fine if they park there now if it gets vacated, but a future owner can put a fence, so then you're back to square one of trying to figure out where to park safely for 217 should they move. And that's kind of the practicality behind all that,
okay,
if that makes any sense, so.
very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else here to speak to this? We'll close it to the public and we'll have our discussion and come up with a decision. What was the vote? The vote was 8-0? 7-0, okay. Vote by area plan. Like, what's your take on that?
I mean, area plan, it seemed like it was a 7-0, they were pretty firm in their decision.
You guys ready to?
I think at this time, I think there's kind of creating, where does this person go to park?
Unless it is some kind of easement between themselves.
If you go down the middle of that alley, they'll get half and they'll get half, and neither one of them have enough to do anything. The way it is now, at least they can park it.
They're parking the right away, but it's better than parking in the right away along the road.
They've done it for 100 years. Okay, you ready? Okay. Okay, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to move forward with the recommendation from area plan of denying the request.
Second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Now we can go to any further business to come before the commissioners today. What we got? Where's it at? Area plan? Okay. It's in small print again. The cargo container? Okay.
We've been provided a copy.
Yeah, we've gone through the, yeah, thank you though, appreciate that. Cargo container ordinance amendment, area plan. Andrew, when you're ready.
Yes, I'm here presenting a recommendation to approve this ordinance amendment that was passed forward by the Plan Commission at our last hearing. That's all I have to say, really.
Okay, very good. And that's available, anybody that wants it, it's,
Yes, I have
Once we-
copies here if anybody.
once it's passed, you can pass those out, because we may.
There was a concern.
Yeah, and Andrew, in the agreement as it's currently written, what does it say as far as the containers, as far as the color of them and/or signage or lettering that's on the side of those? I mean, is there anything in there limiting? I guess what I don't want is a bunch of gaudy collared containers all over the county with shipping companies' names on the side of it. I mean, I would much rather, if there's a way to limit that. Is the ordinance address that at all?
So the ordinance that is presented today and was sent in advance, the only thing on there that really limits appearance is if it was to be attached to another building, it would have to be consistent with the structure that it's attached to.
Right.
As far as signage is concerned, our current sign ordinance, if they were to paint it to advertise for their own business or a business that's operating on that parcel, that would be restricted that way. But as far as if it said Maersk or something on it and they got it, there's nothing in this ordinance that was presented today that would limit that.
But if we wanted to add that to the ordinance today, we would be allowed to do that?
Yes, and I have a copy with
we can
something
change it.
like that to hand out. Go
Say
ahead.
that we just state in there that any previous lettering on it for, when it was a shipping container needs to be covered or removed.
Okay,
Pretty
and
simple way to cover it.
How did you word that in your option there?
And my other option, it didn't address the signage that comes pre-painted on there, but in my amendment, it mentions permanent cargo containers shall be consistent in color to adjacent structures on the immediate parcel, which is opposed to the one that was presented before, which would only be if it was attached. This one is any cargo container on the parcel, whether attached or not.
We have consistent with that that's around on the same property.
Yes, correct. So if there's a house that's gray and the cargo container would be yellow, even if it was on the other end of the parcel, would have to be painted to be consistent with the structure on the parcel.
Okay, that's the concern that we had. The other concern was advertising. We have no problem with if you're ABC company and you own that container, you have ABC company on it. But you don't have G&G excavating on something that's on someone else's property.
Sure, yeah, and
Is that,
that would be restricted under our sign ordinance. We would treat it as a sign in that case if they were to paint it and put their own company on it. The only caveat with that is it would be, if the cargo container is, a Maersk cargo container or some other shipping company that came like that, that would be treated differently than a sign because they're technically not advertising for that business on that site.
What I was suggesting is getting rid of that, so it doesn't have a bunch of
Sure, yeah.
whatever on it. It could have a bunch of graffiti on it when they get it. You see trains going by that have all kinds, so, I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
the concern I have is, even now, Midwest Rake down on Country Club Road, beautiful fencing, beautiful building, they maintain everything nicely, but they've moved in and double stacked these containers, and above their nice white fence is this Japanese or Chinese stuff.
Sure.
It just doesn't look right, it's quality. Would that be addressed in this?
Not in the other option that I made. I would have to write up another part on the ordinance to state that. The only option I have is for the color of the entire container.
I mean, I think we want something, I like the color but I think we also need to eliminate any sort of writing as far as from a former shipping.
From the former, yeah, because
Right.
if somebody wants to advertise their own,
Right.
that's fine.
I will say, if with the second option, it requires the entire container to be colored, so that would eliminate whatever signage would be on there.
Okay,
Okay, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's the case, and I'm fine with that amendment then.
Do you want it to have to be painted the same as the building? I mean, I don't know if that's really our.
It has to do with the aesthetics of what that's gonna look like around the county. I mean, I would much rather have them blend in than look like sore thumbs all over.
Daisies painted all over them or something. I've seen those look pretty nice.
So
So
that
we
would
may
cover
have-
it since they're, Steve, do you have something?
Please, we're welcome. Your input is welcome.
I got to this game late, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on. There were a couple versions of this ordinance that were circulated. The original was version 2.0, and then there was the one that was actually approved by the Plan Commission at their last meeting, which was a significant modification. My client, Mobile Storage Near You, actually took the original one out and circulated it, and there were a lot of people, a lot of businesses who indicated they wanted to approve that one. And then the Plan Commission, at its hearing, considered one that was essentially completely different. And I've worked with the one that was approved by the Plan Commission, and I've got some issues with it that I think at least need to be clarified. And probably means it has to go back to the Plan Commission for reconsideration. And I'd like to go through them. It won't take very long, but just go through them and kind of explain why there are issues. I've redlined the changes I'm proposing to be made to the ordinance. In 3.5.3, they shall not be placed on any public streets, roads, alleys, street parking spaces, or off-street parking spaces. Well, you and I both know that if you have a temporary cargo container, it may go in the area where it needs to be for access, and that may take a parking place to do, or more than one. So I've added to that, it simply can't reduce the required number of off-street parking spaces for that facility. So that would allow it to go into off-street parking, which normally would be the most convenient place. Permits, trying to deal with emergencies. If something happens on Friday at 4 o'clock that requires a container, and that could be industrial, commercial, residential, whatever, you're going to put that container there to take care and respond to the emergency. So I put an exception in there for emergencies and then required that an improvement location permit application shall be made within 3 business days afterwards, so that the permit process could be obtained, but it wouldn't prevent placement in the case of an emergency. The real meat of the changes come in 3.5.3.2. They're permitted uses within industrial 1, 2, 3, and public use. But then I think we need to expand it to allow them as exception uses in residential and commercial uses. I don't think you need to prohibit them, especially in a commercial district, and allow the BZA to then make the determination whether the approval of an exception for a cargo container in a residential or a commercial district meets the requirements under the zoning ordinance for an exception use. Leave leave that to the Board of Zoning Appeals rather than simply prohibiting them within a town's corporate limits in a residential or commercial district. Paragraph 3 there talks about areas outside any participating town's corporate limits. As originally it was drafted, it was permitted uses in I-1, 2, and 3, commercial, public use, and agricultural districts. And again, I added as an exception use in residential and Ag 2 use districts, leaving the determination to the Board of Zoning Appeals. In both of those cases, they still have to meet the requirements of setbacks, signage, you name it, whatever other impositions may be made by the zoning ordinance at that location. Temporary containers under the next paragraph, 3.5.3.3. The way the ordinance was written, they could be used for relocation to or from a property in a district. You couldn't use a storage container for temporary use as described in paragraph 1. So I simply made that modification, which would allow it in any district for use in conjunction with the residence, including A2, and we have lots of residences in commercial districts and agricultural districts, gives that option to every owner of a residence for the temporary use when you're moving stuff out of your house. Paragraph 2, again, rather than tie this so that you would have to come back and get approval from the plan staff if you move that cargo container a few feet in a project, I provided that it could be relocated within the project boundaries during construction on written approval of the plan director or assistant plan director. You don't want to have to go back and get another improvement location permit if you're simply moving it a few feet. In paragraph 4, I said no temporary container shall be placed in any zoning district which creates a traffic or a safety hazard, and then provided a little more detail for the written notice to be given to the occupant or owner at that location, and that a relocation could be approved by the plan director, assistant plan director, or ordinance administrator. Those are some substantive changes to what's been approved by the Plan Commission, but I think it also clarifies where these can be used, under what conditions they can be used, and what kind of approval, such industrial districts, up to the Board of Zoning Appeals. That's where you want it placed. You want somebody reviewing that approval, looking at a site plan, and saying, yes, that's okay. The Board of Zoning Appeals could put conditions on any particular approval in regard to the appearance of the container. I think from the standpoint of appearance, certainly you don't want big advertising signs, but from a practical and a legal standpoint, you want some kind of identification on that container that indicates who the owner is for emergency purposes or violation purposes, if that's the case. So what I'm suggesting is take these suggested changes, send it back to the Plan Commission for its consideration, along with the other considerations you mentioned, and let's see if we can get it in final form.
Okay, thank you for your input, appreciate it.
I'd make a motion that we table it and send it back for further discussion.
Back to area plan.
I guess the only thing that I would say is that I'm not in favor of them in a residential district at all, other than for the temporary use of moving stuff out. So, I mean, but I think it still needs to go back to them to make those decisions.
And
But,
we
I'm not saying I agree with everything that we just talked about, but I'm
Right.
just saying it, we're not ready to approve it today.
right.
Okay.
So
Do you
we
have anything
we
further?
definitely want to obviously see it
Okay.
plenty in advance before it comes back to us. And I'd like to have some discussion with you if you could reach out.
Sure, yeah, and thank you, Steve, for addressing those concerns. Yeah, we didn't hear many of these concerns during the Plan Commission's hearing last month, so yeah, I would recommend moving it forward another month and letting the Plan Commission take another look with these concerns that Steve has addressed.
So we got a motion, I'll second the motion to table.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your willingness to give on that. Thanks for your input, Steve. We always appreciate that. You people that came forward and testified today, I'm glad you felt that you could do that. So, having no further business come before the commissioners, I'd like to welcome Scott Wiley here, probably as a representative of the Chamber of Commerce. Yes. Thank you for being here. No further business. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. No, we don't either. I made triple sure of that. That second page screwed me up. Put that stuff on the front page.
All right.
Morning, Chris. I'd like to welcome Chris McCann from the Sheriff.
Guys, do I need any more? Are we able to get on? I think they're trying to connect it to the Zoom.
Kim is going to zoom in as soon as we can get this, but go ahead, don't wait on us.
Yeah, go ahead and share, as soon as you're on, go ahead and share it on the screen. Yeah, you got it. Okay. Okay. Well, guys, I can get going in the essence of time. You guys all have the presentation in your binder. As soon as that meeting is converted, he said that we'll be able to connect to the Zoom. If you want me to wait for anybody that might be on the Zoom call, I can do that as well. Totally up to you all. So, okay? And Tyler, when you jump on, just grab where I'm at. Okay. So last meeting, this one's a little bit shorter, like I said. This one's going to be more capital intensive, more capital focused. We've, since we met last, updated it, I believe, through April. And all these tabs are started to be teed up and ready to go for the next steps, which is going to be preparing for budget season. So we talked capital improvement plan pretty heavily last time. I've got some high-level information on that, but I've also got the minute details from all the department heads that were met with and discussed. And I have all the funding sources for everything that's truly funded for the next 5 years. So you'll be able to look at that. Not something you're probably going to want to go through every detail today, but if you do, we can certainly open it up and take a look. And again, last time we met, the capital improvement plan was not built out yet, and that was the spring phase that we've been kind of building. So first steps here, we're just going to kind of look at the timelines real quick, where we're at. Brief financial status update. I don't think I need to go through the details of all of our revenues and expenditures coming into the budget season until we start to gather more of the information that we're going to get for that. As far as the revenues go, a lot of the revenues that are already in the plan for the major operational and capital funds are pretty usable for teeing up our budgets. We already have kind of a good benchmark on what we think we're going to receive there. Income tax is going to be something that is still evolving as you get closer to budget season, but we'll continue to update that as well. So again, capital improvement plan, and then I've got teeing up the wage considerations. We talked briefly about this, but we've developed some stuff for the budget process that could create quite a bit of efficiency and transparency on compensation across the county. So where are we at? We just talked first quarter financial position. Last time we met, we looked at year end and we talked about gearing up for the capital improvement plan. We now have all of that inside of this book. So the new book is certainly far beyond where you looked the last time. So I'm just going to keep moving along here. The next page is a budget timeline for 25 from the dates that we are aware of at this point. This is fluid, obviously. We haven't started the process. One thing we do inside of that, and I know your auditor's office does a really good job of putting the information together inside of the Gateway program and all that. We want to stay high level and kind of build the funding of the budget out and also look into future years, think about cash reserves, cash flow, and all that stuff. So there is a budget book that we develop that includes the capital improvement program and includes compensation, includes all that stuff. And part of that's going to come from, obviously, what your department heads submit to the auditor's office and things like that. So that would kind of be the next phase, starting to fund out the budget and get ready to go through the legal process of the budget, which is right here for the most part. And again, if anything changes in there, you can just let us know. But that would be what the next meeting would entail. So quick couple slides on the financial status. Obviously, you guys, we've talked multiple times. Cash flow wise, you're in a great position. Assessed value and tax base. The county's been really fortunate to have such a good tax base. When we look at this slide right here on page 6, we're showing an example of historical through projected years of assessed value, which is the blue line, and your continued trend upward. As we look at projected years, we try to stay a little conservative and use about a 3% margin of growth, which you have exceeded that over and over again, especially in that 22 to 23 phase. And then the bars and the black line are your tax rates. These are county only. These are not taxing district. But you can see because of AV going up from 21 to 25, you guys have actually decreased your tax rate fairly significantly across the board. And the only rates you have intact right now are your levy controlled funds, which we talked about in the last meeting. General fund, health, reassessment, things like that fall in there. Cume Bridge. And then you also have rate controlled fund like the CCD or Cume Cap Development Fund. We're still working on the IT stuff. So if you're good, I'm going to keep moving. All right. Also, I'm going to point out real quick, obviously there's an inverse relationship. If your assessed value goes up, your rates go down. One thing to keep in mind, and I don't know if any of you guys, I just want to bring it up. We brought it up in the last meeting, but the House Bill 1499 implications. All homeowners got an increased supplemental standard deduction, which means we have a lower net taxable value on our homes. It's kind of a protection for those homeowners. So what that did is slowed a lot of that AV growth. Has anybody said anything to you guys that you would want to learn more about that and be prepared to have a conversation? Probably no complaints really because your tax rates are going down. But generally what your homeowners are seeing again is they're increasing their assessed values to market value. So even if your rates go down, they could see an increase in taxes. So I just wanted to make sure if you need it, you're armed for those discussions and ready to go. But pretty low tax rate to start with, though. So. Uh-huh. Right. Well, exactly. And a huge part of it's in your 1% properties, which are your homeowners right now. And that's just that market value shift. What they're selling for is what they should be sort of assessed at, and that's not really been the trend. Yeah. No, right. And that's the argument, right? That's the exact, so what the state did, yeah, what the state did is they implemented some legislation a year ago that basically had a phased approach to increasing their deductions. So it brought down the net value, even though the gross is going up. So really, they shouldn't have seen it near as much this year, but it didn't really impact you guys on your overall AV growth for net assessed values, so. Back to the original? Back to the difference between our assessed value and what our actual rate of tax on is limited by how much the state allows the
your maximum levy growth quotient, yeah, which is stuck at 4% for now, until they change legislation or fix that. I think there's a phase out being planned and discussed in the legislature for that. I do think, what, the other thing we were just talking about is the supplemental standard deduction. That phases out. What you got? You got it fixed?
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
Oh.
assessed value is not really limited, it's just the
Yep.
the max levy. Okay.
Yeah.
It's limited at that growth.
No, the 4% is, as far as I'm concerned, here to stay for now, but in 26, they're talking about what they can do for that. Here's the problem with the 4%. Well, make it more flexible. So previously, it was a capped at 5%, and then it was ebbing and flowing with the 6-year non-farm income factor. So what does that mean? Basically, it's a factor of income across the state, and it's averaged across the board. Well, you guys are growing way faster than that. And that's why you can do levy appeals and things like that. We discussed that early on when we first started with you all in financial planning. Probably wasn't the way to go because you really don't need the cash flow to increase that, and it would increase tax rates. It's an option that's always there because you grow faster than what that maximum levy growth quotient allows. You can levy or appeal that levy for a higher dollar amount in your operational funds. That's the idea. We never went down that road because you really don't need to. And what you've allowed that to do as the governing body is allowed that to decrease your tax rate through the growth of your assessed value. So two different things. The cap we're talking about, the 4%, is levy. You cannot grow your operational levies more than that 4%. I am hearing, which could be nothing, right? It could be years in the future, but that they're going to readdress that cap in the next legislature. Yeah, I see, and yeah, well, for sure. And the other piece to that is, and that's why they did it. That's 100% why they did it. They wanted to protect that AV growth. But then on the AV side, you have the AV growth aspect where that is being restricted. So you're still growing your assessed value like this, but we increase the deductions on our homeowners. So we're basically allowing our homeowners to have higher amounts of deductions through the supplemental standard deduction. That's a 2-year approach. So that phases out and they get back to net. So the idea was maybe we could get to market value in the 3-year period that they implemented that. So they're protecting the taxpayers on the maximum levy growth cap, and they're protecting them on the net assessed value. Oh, just hit mute on yours. Yep. And the net assessed value side of it. Hey, Kim. I guess I'm waving at. So there's kind of a double protection there, and one of them phases out on the deduction side. So that's. Ooh. Hello? You might mute yours, Kim. Okay. I don't know. We probably don't want to do that the whole time. Hello? Test? All right, it's better. Maybe not. We better? I think you got it. Okay. So that's something to keep an eye on. That's something I would tell you to keep an eye on. So in theory, if net assessed value grows faster than that 4%, your tax rates go down. That's the idea. That's what this is showing us right here. So your net assessed value continues to climb faster than what that 4% levy growth adjustment allows us to do, and it ultimately has decreased our taxes. Now, in the future years, you can see it's kind of flatlined. We just have 3% net assessed value growth. So it'll probably continue to go up. But if you look, you started at $6 billion in 2021, and you're already at 8.3 projected next year, 8.08 this past year. So it's growing, and there's no signs of that going down. So tax rates will continue to go down. So I'm with you in this community in specific. You really don't need to increase taxes. You have a good structure. So are you able to share that for them? And we'll email it to the folks that are on Zoom. Okay, next page. Sorry. Yep.
If you look at our tax rate and what it was in 21 compared to what it is in 24, our tax rate went down 12%.
Right. Your home taxes likely did. taxing districts, yep. So that's a big factor that you got to look at is, are they issuing debt? Because the state just implemented, to the point you said, the taxpayer side, the state just implemented a cap on the amount of debt a school can issue. They can only do 80 cents now. So some of them are, they've been at like $1.20 in debt. Now they're having to wean that off as they fade those debts off. So if that's the case in the school in this area or on your tax bill, there's some protections there. But yeah, I mean, you can't control what the other units are doing, only what you guys are doing. And the big thing with the schools is usually debt, and they kind of have to do it with all the projects that they got. I mean, that's their only option. Now, I don't know about your school in particular, but giving the understanding, you're absolutely right. And inside of this financial plan, you can see under the property tax components a bit more detail on the stuff you were talking about, the rate reductions as a percent year over year, things like that. Again, specific to the county. As far as taxing district rates go, we normally get into that if we have a bad circuit breaker, the tax caps, which we don't have. So that's another protection for the taxpayers there. We just don't have a lot of tax cap limits here due to your low tax rate. And that's taxing district wide. So, okay, so weighted days in cash on hand is the next slide. There is about 8 to 10 pages inside of your book that essentially shows you every single major operating and capital fund that the county has, and it's got its cash reserves in comparison to what their budgets are year over year. Okay, so it's fund by fund, and it's broken down by fund category, and ultimately, it's giving you how many days of cash on hand are in there to operate those budgets. We talked about it a little bit in the last one. That's some of the stuff that you might dig into the binder and see a bit more detail on, but that's the stuff we set policies off of, and we try to, if you had an issue with cash flow, we try to build up and do things like that over a course of years, but you don't. You have a great cash flow and a great management team of the financials. So we've always recommended 180 days or half of a year in cash. Reserves, you can see you're well over 300. This is a weighted average, so the idea would be if I had a fund that, like rainy day fund, you might have $3 million in but no budget, it would look like it had thousands of % of cash. So you don't want that to spit off of here and mess your graphs up, so we kind of average it across the type of fund categories.
Just got a
No, you're good.
request from somebody to turn our microphones on. Make sure they're on.
Oh,
Mine
your
is off.
microphones? Okay.
Yours is off.
Don't have anything to
So
say.
I can yell in here if I need to. Okay. So I'll keep moving on. If you guys don't have any questions on cash, this is kind of a major operating and capital countywide. Good position. The next slide really focuses on the general fund, and it'll be the last slide inside of the financial kind of update and analysis section. I'm sorry. What's wrong? Oh, okay. So we're good? All right. Next slide, Tyler, please. So the general fund slide, and we're on slide 8 of the presentation. One more. One more forward. Yeah, that way.
The number's little bitty number.
I'm sorry, and I got them all gray. So, yeah, and in essence, to try and fit as much as I can on a page. Yeah. So the red and blue one, how's that sound? So what this is demonstrating you guys is this is your major operating fund, obviously. This has primarily all your departments, most of your departments in it. It's your biggest operational fund in the entire county. And this is the one we always want to look at and make sure is solvent, healthy, and in good shape for the future. And you can see here, I mean, even in the projected future analyses, you've got cash growing. Your black line represents days in cash reserves. Your blue bar is your budgeted funds. So your appropriation you guys set as a council. And then your red is your actual spending or disbursements. The reason why I do budget versus spending is to show you that the difference between those bars is what we call unused budget, unused appropriation, and it reverts back to the cash balance in that fund. So there's kind of a direct correlation between the black line and that surplus. You can see in the future years we kind of balance it out a little bit, but it's still showing surplus, which ultimately provides us opportunities for more flexibility in our capital improvement program and things like that. So we're going to dig into that here in just a second, but is there any other, thoughts or questions or concerns? We talked about the fiscal environment with assessed value rates. Real quick at a high level. I'm staying pretty high level in this so I can get through it fairly quickly. And then, again, the detail and the data is heavy inside of the book. Any questions on this section?
So, go ahead. The increase in the days of cash on our general fund, is that, it looks like the budget is staying relatively flat, so its revenues are increasing. Or I guess it's only
Surplus.
or surplus.
So basically what your revenues are not on this, and that's the one thing that gets a little confusing. Your budget is your blue line, your red is your actual spending. The difference is the amount of budget we have left over and didn't spend, which you guys are pretty close to a balanced budget inside of that fund, in that general fund. So anything you don't spend in budget, if it's balanced, it reverts back to cash reserves. Yep,
Stays in,
yep.
because I know we'll get to the detail on that, because that's one of the things I guess I would like to talk about, some of the edit funds and.
So and we don't need to flip around, but county operating funds, capital improvement funds, all those are broken down in here with multiple years of revenue, expenses, and cash. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is probably gonna make me look dumb, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. So the black line where it says 452, is that how much cash we actually really do?
That's days in comparison to your expenses. Yep.
Projected.
Okay, so because it's over the blue.
That is projected, yeah, sorry, 24 through 26 is projected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Not
projected.
actual, because we're not there yet.
Okay,
Given the trend, it will get to that.
okay.
So 2023, 375 is actual. Based
Okay.
on that budget that year, you had 375 days of cash on hand. So you could fund your budget for an entire year in general fund without having to generate revenue.
And you're suggesting, normally you suggest 180?
180 minimum. Mhm. Because you live on property taxes, right? And you get them every 6 months.
So
for
then
the
our,
most part.
our cash, estimated cash reserves is substantially great, or is greater than what we've actually even budgeted.
Exactly.
That's what I'm trying to understand.
It is. And so, yeah, and it all boils down to the fact that you have a great tax rate, a great tax base, and you have good cash flow. Now's the time we talked about last meeting to start really implementing some of the plans and things you want to do. If there's planned spend downs in some of this cash reserve in the future, that's not going to hurt the county. That's the point of that. So if you know you have this much, you have the ability to take, if you're going to grow in the future too, we could consider multiple things inside of the budget, not only in 25, but all the way out to 29 in this case. So there's opportunity.
And I guess that's the thing that I see, not that I want to go on a spending spree by any stretch of the imagination, but, some of these funds, we're running such a heavy cash balance that, I think for our constituents' best interest, we need to make some strategic investments in what's going to prepare our county for the future. And that, we're not just stacking up cash to stack up cash.
Yeah, that's certainly reasonable. Yeah. So, and one thing I'll point out too, I think where you're going with this is some of the, well, so, and that's always an option if you wanted to live off of the cash flow you have for a little bit, but obviously balance it, manage it, I don't know, but you really don't need to lower the rate because it's 20 cents, which is astronomically low. You can see where you compare to 20 similar counties of your size. Inside of this, I have that data as well, and you're in really, really good shape. You're on the bottom part of tax rates. Probably one of the lowest in the entire state, to be honest about it, which I have that too. I don't have it in
The thing
here.
that I see with that cash, you can lower our rate, but I guess if we can make investments that are gonna provide benefits in the future, that then, because we all know that sometimes you're eating chicken and then sometimes you're eating feathers. We wanna make sure those years we gotta eat feathers, we prepared ourselves from a stability perspective that.
As long as we have a clear direction.
Well, and I think you do.
So we don't have to eat feathers.
I think you do have, yeah, I think you have a plan in place that allows you to mitigate any sort of obstacles that come in the future. But I also think, to kind of maybe Carrie's point too, with some of the projects that you guys have addressed to us that you want to try and get funded now and in the future, we're about to show you the capital improvement plan, and keep in mind, when you look at this, every dollar that we have in here has a home. It's got a revenue tied to it, unless it's red, and I'll show you all the details. We basically were able to fund more than 95% of the requests that came in. without raising any sort or using any sort of cash up, if that makes sense. We're balancing budgets while we do this. I'll show you the details of that as we go into this. The other thing, I'm sorry, you had a question.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Are
no,
you
go-
finishing
you're
your
fine.
point, or I just have a question? So at the end of '23, you showed where we were at, and then we had more than $2 million worth of encumbrances. How were the encumbrances addressed?
They're built in.
this big picture?
Yeah, they're-
So where did you build them in?
To the next year's budget, they roll forward. So here's how they impact the current year. I think we talked about this in the last meeting. They're considered unused appropriation in the current year, right? They're a part of those cash reserves. But then in the next year, they're increasing the appropriation amount. So they are considered in this, and I can show you inside of the plan as well. But they are essentially rolling forward year to year in January, and they're impacting that next year's spending. So it is included in the cash reserve projections year in, year
So
out.
the $27 million figure you have in '24 includes those encumbrances that we've done, and you'll continue to track them, I'm assuming, up until June when we're ready to move
Yeah,
forward with the
It
budget?
includes 1.191795 million in encumbrances.
Well,
It also includes 276,796 in potentially additional appropriations adjustments. And then, 37,000 in additionals is the number there. So, yeah, there's quite so the 27 is the original budget. The budget goes up to the
Yeah.
28,780, but your spending has unused appropriation built into it based on historical trends.
Yeah, because 27 is what we budgeted.
Yeah, 27.2 is your original, or your current budget.
Yeah.
28.7 is your total appropriation spending authority right now.
Which isn't listed on your chart there.
It is not, it is considered in the spending though, the disbursement.
Okay.
You see the 25 million? That includes that number and the amount of spending. And it also includes unused appropriations that carry forward as well. So we just kept it certified so it can tie out. I can adjust it to do that if you want. It'll just make the unused bigger.
No, I know that that's critical. It's
Mm-hmm.
$2 million that we don't have, that we have spent. I just want to be sure we're accounting for it.
It is.
Since it's not showing up here as a clearly defined figure.
Yeah, it is inside of that total disbursements number.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you look at the financial plan in here, you'll see all those broken down.
Okay.
And we tie out to the 28 in total spending authority. So we just use certified budget on the budgeted number. So if anything, what it would do is it would make the difference between that red bar and blue bar bigger. That's how that would look. Because we would increase it to 28, but your spending's still going to be 25.
Okay. Thank you.
No, it was a great question. I mean, we need to account for that, and until our last meeting, we didn't have that information well-known, so we do have that baked in, especially off the historical years. Another thing we do on the revenue side, especially with general fund, when you look at the revenue projections and the funds themselves, interest is a huge number right now, right? We've been in an economy where we've been seeing major interest on the cash in our bank accounts. We start to dwindle that off a little bit in the future to remain conservative. You also have what we call local income tax supplemental lit. You get that if you qualify. If your county's account has more than 15%, I believe is the number now, you are getting a distribution on an annual basis. And so are all the other units that get it. You got it this year. We've got that built in here. They just sent those out, certified them. We don't show that in the future just because we want to remain conservative. But that's also a subsidy inside of your general fund. So essentially, we're keeping revenues conservative. We're keeping your spending as conservative, I guess, as we can be. We keep it as high as possible, including those encumbrances, any adjustments, anything we see in there. And we've also decreased the unused appropriation below the historical trends. So that way it shows we're going to spend more and we're going to receive less, but we're still funded. So that's the idea. Any questions on that approach? And again, I could go through this whole book with you, but I think you might run me off too. So I want to give you some information to leave here and look at it. And if you have any questions from there, we can discuss. All right, so capital plan at a high level. And then I will probably show you how the capital plan looks inside of the book because it's brand new to you guys. But first department is highway department. And you can see in the green and red graphs, they represent, or donut charts, they represent the amount that's funded and the amount that's not funded. That is not to say that we can't get that amount that's not funded. I think we still have flexibility. I think it's really up to you guys and what you want to do once you see the overall breakdown. Your highway superintendent does a great job budgeting. Been doing it for a long time. The only thing we wanted to do is create fundable areas and avenues and revenue to tie directly to those capital needs. So we've done that not only for this department, but we have the sheriff work release in jail, and we also have the commissioner's list of items that were requested as well. So if there's anything else, now's the time to get this information to us. But we'll show you the detail of this. Right now, this is kind of high level. Off to the right, you can see inside of that funded capital, there's a lot of paving, right? A lot of bridge, some equipment, just various different things that you're going to have year over year. And it's also for sure projected out 3 years. This one's tough, obviously. The road mile today is going to be completely different in 3 years. We have something built in as a placeholder essentially at that point where we have this built through 2029, and it's kind of earmarking funds for these same types of programs, paving, bridges, equipment, all those different things. And then you can see where it's funded from in that second bullet point. So the majority of funding come from obviously the highway funds and the bridge fund. So 40% of the total funding for these is bridge funds and the cumulative bridge, which the bridge funds are kind of a pass-through fund. They have their own individual ones, as we discussed, I think, in the last meeting. Your motor vehicle highway and your highway restricted funds, wheel tax, CCMG is your community crossings matching grant, and your local road and street make up 57% of the funding sources. Again, these are broken down to the minute details, to the penny, of what you are going to appropriate for these budgets inside of this plan. So it isn't just big round numbers. It is you have 500,000 here, 200,000 here, 5,000 here, until it gets to this number. So $51.5 million in total funded capital over the next essentially 24 to 29 6-year period. CCD is part of it too.
So those dollars are only the county's dollars. So like if it's a community crossing or a rural grant or a bridge project, the state funds aren't in these numbers.
We include the 1.5 match on CCMG.
Oh, you do?
Just to get more of the bituminous. Yeah, but you guys get it just about every year, isn't that accurate?
Yeah,
So
But as far as, like say the bridges that we're qualifying for, those are an 80-20 match through NDOT on bridges that we're doing.
our portion is only the county's portion, and then we have the 80% added to the bridge funds themselves. We do our match, carry that over, and then we have the 80% added from the state's level.
Because,
So,
that's one of the concerns that I know Steve and I have talked about, just going forward. We want to make sure while we're able to apply for these grants from the state at an 80-20 match on our bridges, that we've got the funds, because I think this last bridge call, we actually did not apply out of concern that we wouldn't have the cash we needed for the 20% match. And to me, when we're getting, pretty much $4 for every dollar we spend, we've got to figure out how we
Exactly.
can leverage that and not let those opportunities pass us by.
exactly. So to your point, everything in here is built out to show you where those funds are coming from for the next 6 years.
Because I know we've been awarded, we got 5 or 6 bridges currently awarded through NDOT?
Yeah, we're up to the high number, especially if you count the small structures.
But I know that being able to continue to have those grants out there, we just want to be able to make the most of that.
Yep, and that's the whole point of the CAP plan, is every bit of money we can get, I don't want to say it's free money, but every grant we can get that doesn't come out of our own pockets is the way we set this up. So we try to look at it from that long-term approach. It's very fluid, though. I mean, there's things that are going to change, too.
Your $51 million that you have here, is that, like, let's say the Bridge 9, does it take into account the $4 million, or is it just consider our match portion, the 51, for what your capital funding is?
I can show you exactly how it's set up. It's essentially taking the bridge fund. You can go ahead.
So what we did is we took the total amount that you gave me for that bridge, and then I put that as the budget, and then I matched the 80% in the revenue portion.
And then we took the 20% from your guys' funding sources.
Yes.
So to be clear, that 20% is reflected in this 51 million?
The whole.
Everything.
The whole is
entire amount.
there.
Your 100% bridges are in here.
Huh? The entire amount? It's-
Yes, yeah, because in theory, you're appropriating the whole amount.
Okay, I
Right.
guess that's true because we're getting the 80% from the state or whatever.
Yeah, but we're only taking revenue of the amount of 20% from the county funds to the other fund, and then assuming the federal funding comes in. We know that runs on a fiscal year a lot of times, adapt. But the idea is 100% of the budget is in here for that 4 million, right? But the 20% is the only portion we're pulling from your revenue sources to make sure the other 80% is funded by the state.
Because it does flip-flop, so like the bridge we approved this morning, we
Yep.
started that in 2013, where our first award from NDOT was 3 years ago. So I mean.
Yeah, I know.
We kept thinking it's gonna go, and it'd come in over bid, we'd bid it again and again.
And the longer you wait, the more it's gonna do.
Yeah, and it just
Yeah.
kept going up, and then finally NDOT stepped up and said they would pay their 80% on all the overages.
Yeah. Well, but see, the key to this now is we want it to be simpler for you guys to just say, yes, we have the funding, let's go.
Right.
You know, and if that changes, if now I'll get a bid in for 5 million on this bridge, you're going, oh man, I need more money. I need 20 grand more, or whatever it is. Where do I get that? Well, this is adaptable. You can call us, we can get it changed in no time and be like, nope, you're good. Take this portion from this fund. And that's how this thing's set up. And honestly, you can really just flip to the pages most of the time and see that you have a tool right there. And you might be able to go, hey, I just need to go to the council and get an additional appropriation for this amount to make sure I have the funding for that bridge. So it's definitely got the ability to adapt quickly, just because of the understanding of the fiscal environment. But yes, we do account for the grant money in here, and we do account for 100% of the expense based on what was given to us. Yes, sir. Yep. We want to always get that, right? Like $1.5 million there, let's get it. So we have our $1.5 million match, and we have the $1.5 million from CCMG to fund the difference. Yep. But it's there. You don't have to question that. Now all you have to do is fill out the paperwork, and hopefully they don't decide not to give it to us. But I did have a conversation with some legislatures recently where they basically said over the years of the CCMG, they were really tracking this stuff well so that they could make sure that people were using it, and those that have been using it, which is you guys, are going to get that preference because you've been doing it every year over year. A lot of communities, honestly, didn't have the money, and they were just like, or a plan, they would just say, we're not going to do it, we'll never get it. They never tried. So those communities are trying now, and they're not getting the money because they've never been on that list. So that's why we keep bidding on it. We keep appropriating for it and making sure we're ready to go.
So can I ask a different question then?
Yeah.
So here where you're saying these are including the money from the state, but when you go back to the tab that says capital improvement funds, that first tab that says capital improvement funds, and the first one there is Cume Bridge, there is no accounting there, at least it doesn't appear to me.
Yeah, if you go to bridge,
there's-
like a bridge fund, one of the bridge funds, that's where the 80% revenue component would come in.
Okay, but this tab then also is not considering the state money. This one is only considering what money we would take in.
Any portion you
And
pull
what money
out.
we would spend out without the state monies being received and put into this fund.
Right, that fund's taking the 20% for, let's say, Bridge 123, and it's putting it over in the Bridge 123 fund. And then you have the total appropriation for Bridge 123 in that fund, and the 80% match goes in there. So you're not actually running the 80% match through the Bridge fund. I thought that's how we discussed doing it in the last meeting. So,
But in this, you are using the state's revenue.
all of it we are. If you flip a
Each
few
one of
more
those.
pages
Okay.
there, let me show you. You're on page 31 there, Cume Bridge. If you go to page 36, you'll see what I'm talking about.
So what we do is we have a bridge replacement line item that we budget for that, and we calculate what our portion is going to be for each fund number. The State Board of Accounts makes us have a fund number so it's easy to track for them.
Right.
And then we put our 20% portion in the bridge replacement in 1135,
And so a lot of our clients, and we'll do it that way, kind of where they have the 80/20 and they have like 5 bridges in that same fund. And this is honestly a real clean way to do it, I think. But you're basically creating, I would call it like an agency fund. kind of like a pass-through fund for the bridge itself. But yes, the 20% portion is coming out of that if it's highlighted to come out of that. So on page 36, you can see that it says transfer in from the Cume Bridge Fund. And that's the portion, the 20% portion that comes out of that revenue stream. And then the rest of it would be your grant match from the federal side. Bless you. So it's accounting for all of it on both ends. We just have more funds in the capital improvement side that are accounting for the bridge work. And by all means, I mean, if there's anything that's not in here that needs to be funded, we need to address it and get this thing updated. So, okay, are we good on that for now, on the highway one? I can jump to the next. I got 2 more slides here with capital and specific to the departments, and I got a summary I can show you. So sheriff's capital, 3.579 was requested, and 3.579 has been fully funded between general fund and CCD fund. I think there's some other stuff maybe throughout the county's budgets that is funding sheriff's department, jail, maybe even the work release, maintenance, things like that, that maybe isn't broken out in capital, but this was the request. So that's funded. And again, there's detail in the back of all the actual requested items. And then the commissioner's capital. So this is one thing I know when we first started working with you guys and really talking, there was I think a sheet of paper, and it had a lot of items on it that, we wanted to address and we wanted to build a program for. I believe correct me if I'm wrong, if they're not on here, let me know, but I believe most of them are on here. But there's $24.2 million that is fully funded through county economic development income tax, your CCD, Cume Cap Development Fund, and your general fund. And it includes some of those items that you can see in there, and there's probably a few other things as well. And Tyler has a good note on the bottom there. There are some planned spend downs in 25 and 26 for some larger items. You can see a parking garage, fairgrounds, things like that. So, but they're not significant to the overall cash flow. Any questions on that? Anybody want to discuss any items?
I mean, I guess one of the questions I have on that, I just know Craig Snow has got quite a list of projects, and I know we've got the ones that I think are probably most relevant to the county listed in that list that I'd given you earlier. But I know one of the things that I was wondering about, I don't know where the right time is to bring that up from a perspective of, currently we have I think it's a $3 million line item that comes out of the county's edit funds to pay for the health insurance.
Right.
And with our, I know this is maybe a little bit out of my lane, but I'm trying to look at where edit funds are going to be needed for some of these other projects. With our general fund being so strong cash-wise, is that something that the county could look at letting those health funds come out of the general fund to maybe draw that balance down a little bit, which in turn gives us more edit funds to build up if we have some of these other larger ticket item projects come online with the parking garage or some of these other things that we can really leverage some of these ORRI dollars and other things we have coming at us, that we've got the cash reserves in edit to be able to pay for those types of things.
Yeah, I think you could probably, depending on if you're saying 3 million and that's the number, or if there's more than that, I mean, it might change it, but I think you could probably do it funded, like balanced budget. I don't think you'd actually have to even eat up cash flow if you wanted to take that approach, because your general fund's got a decent surplus over the next 3 years built in. I think that would be an opportunity, but I'll go back to this too. When it comes to budgeting, it also depends on what we do for, wages, raises, things like that. So that can have an impact as well on what available cash flow might be there, which
Yeah,
we'll
Carrie,
briefly hit on.
It does look like that's a large balance compared, I mean, it's continued to build. So yeah, I would think that makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, sure.
To use the money that we've got to the best of our ability.
That way we can keep those edit funds, for those
Absolutely.
really, infrastructure investments that we need to make in the county.
Yeah.
So are you just saying that we potentially move that to the general fund?
If you wanted to in 25, to Carrie's point, if you moved, let's say you move 3 million over there, and we could hopefully still try to balance general, depends on what the raises are and things like that.
Okay.
And you would basically create a surplus inside of the EDIT fund, Economic Development Fund, to allow for other projects. So, but you have good cash reserves in there. It's not a concern if you do some planned spend downs.
I just know depending on how some of these projects go and, whether it's a city-county partnership on a garage and what
Right.
amount of ORRI funds might come, mean, those things, they could be some $3 to $5 million swings that I'm just trying to
Sure.
make sure. I want a nice, healthy balance left in our edit fund, but at the same token, I wouldn't say that edit funds should, I'm not saying we couldn't use them if we need to, but I would say health insurance would be what I would call a normal edit fund expenditure.
But don't we have a large a huge reserve in the health money?
We do in edit right now because of all the ARPA funds we've been spending, a lot of our infrastructure, our investments
Well,
have been made.
in what we set aside for health. We have a huge amount of money there, and we're not spending it. I mean, I realize that's our insurance policy, if you will.
Right, yeah.
But that may mean that we
57
don't really
no-brainer.
need to put more money into it. We already have money into it,
right.
which may mean we don't need to move it from anywhere to anywhere.
Yeah, that's smart.
I mean,
Because that's some of the things that because we were even last year, I think we did, if I remember right, did a little bit of almost double budgeting because we were trying to see if we could land the plane as far as from a perspective of burn some of the additional cash that was in our cash account for the health insurance, but not, take it below what we felt comfortable
Yeah.
with. But that balance is pretty big. Now, we have had some pretty sizable expenditures this year that I know our attachment rate, we've been running right there, that it's not grown as much as it has historically or has the last couple of years. But still, I agree that, I'm thinking there's 5 million or 5.5 million or something that's in that account. So there's definitely some room to probably eat a little of that balance down as well.
And we can build that in if that's, I like what you said the most. I mean, that keeps all the money intact in that case. So,
It's just
basically,
one
if
of
you're
those
funded
things
up
with
enough.
Health insurance, you just never know. I mean, you get a couple, which we have stop loss carriers. So I mean, if you get really large
Right.
claims, they cover it as long as then the next year they don't laser you up and all of a sudden you've got some huge exposure.
Right.
So I mean, it's one of those things with health insurance, you could spend $1 million in a few months.
Right. And then that could affect you in the future ongoing too. So, one thing, that would be a one-time opportunity though, that maybe it works and you don't have to do anything, the next year and you kind of reincorporate, those
And
funds.
we already did $1 million of that last year. If I remember, we were spending $1 million out of that health fund.
That's a great idea. So yeah, but good cash flow in there. And if you guys decide to go that direction or a hybrid of those directions, just let us know and we'll update accordingly. That next page is basically the summary page of about probably 40 pages of capital improvement lists. We wanted to show you just the summary. Is anybody colorblind? Because one of my guys is colorblind, and I realized I had him doing this, and they didn't. He's like, I'm honestly, he goes, I'm sorry, man. I'm so simple-minded. I told you guys this last time. I'm like, the easiest way to do this is to color coordinate it. So capital funded is at the top. You can see the total amounts, 79 million. It's kind of blocked on that top right corner up here, but and you have each department amount. Yeah, we're good. All right, sweet, that worked. Thank you. And then, so the 79 million is the total, and you have all those different departments in different colors, and down below is your funding sources. So that tells you which funds would specifically outlay which dollar amounts in each year. We try to summarize it all in one page. So the yellow for Commissioner's Department is funded from those 3 yellow sources. And again, there's even more detail that breaks down the absolutes of what line items, what dollar amounts are in each year and in each fund. And that's inside of the capital improvement program. That's not something you want me to put on the screen and try to do a presentation on because it would take a little while. So, okay, so that is the fully funded amount. And like I said, anything that's in red in the detail in the back of the capital plan is the stuff that's not completely funded yet, but if we need to, we can certainly find a location. So,
I
yes,
just want
ma'am.
to comment that I just love the way you did that.
As long as you're not colorblind, it's awesome. Yeah. That orange and that red really messed them up. I don't know. I mean, I think that and the green, you can't see green. So,
I got a question. So real quick,
yes, sir.
do you have down community crossing as a fund?
Yeah, so community crossings matching, or the grant fund should be in its own fund. We should be transferring over the 1.5 million to that fund, and just like the bridge fund. Yeah, I'm setting it up like we're getting it for sure. And we have the match, I believe, coming out of wheel tax. So, but yeah, I want to assume we're going to get that because, and that's one of those things that, again, if the state decides and NDOT decides they don't want to give it to us, I don't see that happening. What I see is, hey, maybe a major infrastructure project happens in the state of Indiana and they want to withhold more of these funds, and now all of a sudden we get 750,000 or, I don't know, something less. So that would be something we'd have to modify the plan a little bit. But yes,
Also,
I have it as a separate fund, sorry.
Some of these where we're showing them as CCD, they
Uh-huh.
were things that people had piddly things, $4,000 for the jail, $3,000 for the jail.
Uh-huh.
Those were things that we moved from the general budget over to, with the grace of the commissioners, over to the CCD fund, and they aren't really capital improvements. They were put on that line, and when we made that colossal move that you guys didn't tell us no, I don't know that we asked, they suggested we do it, and the council did it, which isn't how that normally would operate, I'm just going to say it. But those things do not need to be put into the capital, the CCD money. Those are piddly things.
Would you rather them
Jim
go back to
Smith-
general?
Yeah,
in
Jim
that area?
Smith had come to me, there were things that he was having to provide a claim, and he couldn't use their normal claim process. He had to get that claim to the commissioner's office for them to take care of, and all that did was cause one more layer of pain in the neck, I'm sorry.
So we
Yeah,
can shift,
for
we
no
can shift
reason.
those back to general fund, and you would have more capacity in CCD fund to help fund some of those.
And that's what we need to be sure of as those budgets are being turned in.
Yeah.
That they have those smaller things. I didn't mean to say piddly. They're important to them, I understand that. But they probably don't even really rise to the level of being a capital improvement. I mean, anything that costs under $3,000, that's
What is
probably
your
not
guys'
much.
policy here? Do you have one?
Yeah, right.
I've seen it
It's been too
anywhere
many
between
years.
$1,000 and $10,000, you know, you
we're-
gotta go for that, but, pardon? 50,000? So that's why we're looking at the big ticket items.
Yeah.
So anything under 50 that would be considered capital by the DLGF, you guys just put in the department? Is that how you want to do it?
That's-
Okay.
Well, I mean, depending on what it is. Obviously, the other piece of that puzzle is if it's something that the department wants, but it's something that the commissioners should control, obviously, that makes vehicle purchases. Those are the things that they need to have control over.
And that was the biggest ticket item, I think, for the sheriff's department is the vehicle and apparatus rotation. Other than that, I could look at the others.
Because it could be furniture, it could be something we didn't even think of, so if we could put a small one, like 10,000 or something.
It's really up to what your guys' local preference is at that point. However you want to do it.
That would include work release also?
If they have capital in nature items. Anything with like a useful life longer than a year, bigger, better, longer is the accounting term. So if it makes it bigger, it makes it better, it makes it last longer. So you're not going to use bullets, right? Those are supplies. Those are ammunition, things like that. But potentially, I mean, you can do vests, bulletproof vests. Those are capital items. Quite frankly, I've actually heard recently the SBOA approves dogs. The dogs are capital items, and you can depreciate them. So, fun fact. Yes, ma'am.
This maybe isn't the appropriate time to ask, but in talking to Tyler, we were talking about potentially setting up a meeting before with just the council members to discuss like what we did this last time where we made those changes so that we could know what potential changes we potentially should make or could make, so we could discuss them with the department heads at the time that we actually had our budget workshops.
Yeah, and we kind of put together a budget book for that last year. I don't know if we ended up doing the meeting, but.
We didn't, but he discussed, as a council, like doing it in smaller groups.
And that includes your compensation components and all the budget if you do that, right? So it'd be your entire 25 proposed budget, which the idea of this is the capital would already be funded as requested right here.
Yeah.
So that's already taken care of. Check that box. The capital improvement program's got the budget right here. The next steps are really your supplies, other services, and your personal services.
Here's our capital asset policy.
Okay, so there's 5 different categories of various different things. Okay, none of them are under 20,000. So vehicles are your lowest one, and it's 20,000 on the policy. So will you mind sending that to us, and then we'll adapt this to follow that, and the smaller ones will move back to the general fund in the proposal for 25's budget. So that'll be the simple fix for that. And then we'll also go back in and look at anything. We can set parameters on the cap plan to say if it's a vehicle, it's 20,000 or more type thing, which most of the time they are. But we can certainly adjust that. Thank you. That's
So-
good information.
Kathy, back to your point, those two meetings that we had set were August 14th and 15th, excuse me, 8:30 to 1, where we're going to discuss with the departments. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, Tyler was saying maybe as a council, we should have like a really quick pre-workshop meeting.
Yeah, we call them workshops.
Pre-workshop meeting so that we can know what particular questions we could ask or what changes we could potentially make and be able to discuss it with the department heads as they come in, so we don't make the mistake like we did last year.
So,
Yeah.
but that's not,
their input.
yeah, the
Yeah.
14th and 15th.
It's not, wouldn't be that.
No, it'd be
like
before
a
that.
workshop, it would be a short meeting.
It'd be before that, yeah.
And then we would, it wouldn't be a public meeting because we'd have to do it in like smaller groups so that we could all be somewhat, so to prepare us to ask the questions if there's any changes that they recommend that we potentially might want to make.
Yeah, and our big components are going to be revenue.
I mean,
Is it
you-
within your revenue
You can explain it
constraints?
better than I can, because I don't know, I've never been through it.
I
Okay.
think it's just an opportunity to have some questions and answers back and forth in a smaller meeting, whereas in this meeting, you have to stay higher level. But we can look at the budget request and see what adjustments are possible and if there are any issues with those.
It's a deep dive into the budget.
You
And-
give the department heads ownership of what they're doing, and they buy into what we're trying to do. And I think that's the-
Yeah, so they send all their stuff anyways before that meeting. We would take their information, show the department numbers, which I know you guys kind of have some of these discussions already through some of the stuff that the auditor software will provide. But it also gives us the ability to, a lot of times when we get this cap plan, right, everybody knows what their capital is, knows what it should be for 25. And then in the Form 1s that are sent out, it's completely different, tens of millions different, whatever. So we kind of have that built in to checks and balances. But the piece I'm about to talk to you guys about actually in the next slide or two is the compensation consideration. What do you do countywide for compensation, and how do you apply that with a looking forward into the future approach? Something that we've built into our plans now is something that gives us the ability in these smaller meetings to say, if you, let's say, wanted to be like, all right, what's a 3% look like, the 3% raise across the board? Okay, well, we can fund it. What about a 5%? And we can automatically just go into this database we've built and we can type in 5% and it changes everything. If you wanted to look at departments at different levels, if you wanted to look at a flat number, it not only changes the compensation, I'm going to show you some examples actually as I get into it. It not only changes the compensation, but it changes the longevity, the retirement, the FICA, the Medicare, everything. It changes everything that is attributable to an employee inside of the county, and then it ties it out to your revenue inside of the financial plan. So it's a pretty cool little model we've been doing a ton, especially for counties. But real quick to wrap up our plan, I know I've mentioned some of this, but you've got roughly $79 million in capital funded, and you have and that's from 24 to 29, no tax increases and no debt. That's, I mean, I know you guys know it, but that is amazing. I mean, it really is. You also have potential to fund more if you need to. And you know, Carrie, we talked about TIF in the last meeting a little bit. We're not doing anything on the TIF, but that's also an option for capital inside of the county if you had the cash flow inside of there for certain projects, right? And then potential to utilize the cash flow and the surpluses that you have in some of these funds to fund more. We've kept MVH and MVH restricted fund or highway funds balanced into the future. And we can adjust those as needed because there is cash flow opportunity a lot of times there. And then ultimately, after capital, we really need to consider our personal services because that's the biggest part of the county. So that's the salaries and wage stuff I was going to briefly go over if you guys are good with that. Kind of give you a couple examples and a couple looks at what this does. And then I'll be wrapped up on my presentation piece. But I just started to get into it, so I got a little ahead of myself. But ultimately, what we would do is we gather information. So how many employees do we have in the county, roughly? quite a bit. So 350. So you would have a database that has all 350 employees, and you would have a baseline for what every one of their salaries are. And it would essentially, and we can jump ahead, Tyler, to the next slide here, because I've kind of talked about this. And it would essentially give you what their all-in compensation package looks like at a county level. So this is an example. I think we pulled this from a different county, but in this case, Brenda works in the assessor's office. She's got 12 years with us. Her current salary is 33, and she has longevity of $720, and her perf or retirement numbers are 4871. FICA is built into that, and you have a total package of 41 for the 2024 budget. And if you did a 3% raise, all those numbers would increase her to 43,000. And then it would ultimately give you what the total increase by department, by individual, by entire compensation for the entire county would go up by. So if you go to that next page to kind of summarize it quickly, I don't want to hold you guys back too long here. This is what it essentially evolves into is I want to look at a 6-year approach to my compensation for the county. This is what it does with a 3% raise across the board for every single department in the county with consideration for longevity, FICA, Medicare, everything. We can even add health insurance if you want to. And really what it tells us is what is the increase year over year. So from 25 to over 24, it's 187,000 in this county. And then we have that tied directly to your financial plan that we've been talking about. So then all I got to do is show you a summary. I have another tab that shows a summary of revenue versus the current budget. So when this updates, it's automated. The whole thing just tells you what the adjustment needs to be. And you see whether it's funded or not. And if it's not funded, you can either make the approach of reducing elsewhere, or you can reduce the percentage. You can do whatever you want. So it's a super usable model. But it really provides a lot of transparency and a lot of efficiency in the budget process. And the other key to it is you don't have unions, right? None? Okay. A lot of times you have like the negotiation platform. A lot of the communities that we work with and we serve are dealing with that, and more municipality-based, but police and fire unions, things like that, even school unions. So one of the big things here, though, is it creates transparency for every department inside of the entire county, and it allows them to see the compensation package that you offer. It also allows them to see potentially the trajectory that you want to go on as a community. I want to try to give you guys 5% every year, or 10%, whatever it is. 10% is pretty good, but but can I afford it is the key. It's not just talk at that point. Is it going to be fundable with consideration for our capital plan? With consideration for supplies and other services and charges inside of our budget. So that's something that we've started to develop. That's something that integrates directly into the budget and also the financial plan. So that is another process in itself, though. I will say you would be more intensely focused on the future of compensation for the county in that, but it would show all 350 employees. So cool model. I like it for the last slide here, because it's adaptable. I can show you with the click of a button what a 3% versus a 5% versus a 10% looks like, and what the departments will look like with that. So
I'm just gotta say, I've got 11 o'clock. I gotta get.
no, you're good. I'm wrapped up, to be honest about it.
I have 11:20.
I just want to appreciate
Oh.
everything you guys are doing. Appreciate everybody being here, and Brad will be here for a few more minutes.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Brad and Carrie.
I just want to say thank you guys for coming.
We'll shoot an email out, but if you guys have any questions, there's a lot of information in here you can go through, and we can certainly answer any questions you guys got.
I have a
So,
question.
yes,
On your models, you're basing
Uh-huh.
it basically on percentage raises?
it can be anything.
Okay, so last year we gave flat dollars?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, we have a client right now, they're doing multiple adjustments. So they're doing personal service changes for police and fire at a dollar flat figure, because they're bringing parity between the bottom and the top. And then they have percentages for everybody else, and then they have longevity adjustments. So it does all that. We can adapt a whole new longevity model. If you guys have trouble, a lot of the longevity we've been discussing with clients and communities is we have trouble retaining employees and giving them a benefit for a 10-year of service. And sometimes people come in and that baseline number keeps getting brought up, so they're getting paid the same as somebody with 10 years of service or something like that. So you build longevity in. You design it in a way that it's, hey, we want to reward you for serving our community. And we've started to do that a lot too. It's a
It can all
different.
be different.
Yep, we can, I mean, honestly, we had a serious calling for this last year. I think we spoke at the AIC conference a little bit. The first part of this for us, and we're not even talking about this with you guys right now, but we have a comparative analysis. Everybody does these salary analyses, and they're based on like GDP standards and national averages, and it doesn't really tell us what we want to know. What we've done is kind of design something using budget data, your rate ordinances, your salary ordinances, and your actual 100-hour data of what people are getting paid in communities that are similar in size to you. Not only in size with population. I had this discussion with Howard County recently. They said that they were about the same population as Kosciuszko. I said, well, they have double the tax base. So it's not a fair compensation adjustment, or it's not a fair comparison adjustment there. So we want to look at, for you guys, $8 billion roughly AVs, and then maybe a bigger range of population. So the idea of that is getting you to a baseline on the comparative analysis, which, like I said, I haven't talked too much about that. I think you're in, if you guys think you're in good shape on your baselines where you're at, the amount raises and things like that are where you want to go. You want to look at that stuff moving forward. This is the analysis that we would prepare to put into the budget components. So we did both of them, but we had a serious calling from a lot of clients that were like, it all started when the state police increased their wages to 70-some thousand. So
We felt the pain.
yeah. Yeah, and I've got some pretty poor, I hate to say it, pretty poor communities I serve that are just trying to scrape the dollars together to get these raises done. And that's where their focus goes. I mean, they're not paving roads and fixing potholes and doing stuff like that. They're trying to get the wages in there to keep people.
So what, for our contract right now, does that include just the general, like 3%, whatever?
That would be like the overall, just the budget build out with the budget book and that. This would need to be a little bit additional to build it out, but after that, it would be a part of it. So that's because this has got to be built from scratch for you guys.
Okay.
So
But as far as for this year and the contract for now, just regular, like whatever we decide for
yeah,
wages.
that's all a part of that. There's
Okay.
nothing new on that unless you decided to go down like a compensation study path.
Okay.
It's not $60,000 to do one of those for us. We've been doing them for somewhere between 10 and 15,000, and it gives you 5 years of data and it's adaptable at that point. Just so we're
So
transparent.
then once we paid that initial fee, then it would just be covered as part of our.
It would be
contract.
built into your budget.
That's pretty cool.
Problem is, I've got a lot of hours that go into building it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of research, a lot of work with you guys that we'll have to do to really make sure we've captured everything that's
But
important.
once it's built, then we could be doing different things, like say we wanted to do like, a $1 increase.
And that's a
for,
part of your financial planning
for the
process.
Sheriff's
Mhm.
Department, for example, but everyone else is,
Yep.
percentage or whatever.
That's all, that would all be baked into the normal contract that we do with you guys at that point, because we would have it integrated into your financial plan. It would be a whole new tab inside of the book. But when you get the chance to start doing that stuff, and that's the thing, you sit in the meeting and you say, well, what's a 5% look like, across the board, or a 5,000 across the board, or whatever it is. You can plug that in one cell and it changes the whole thing. It's pretty cool.
He doesn't like that 5%.
I saw it on there. I'm just making stuff. I had a county the other day say they wanted to do 5,000 per employee.
But it's okay if he doesn't like it, because it's actually a council decision.
He's on the wage committee, though. so
I
it's-
know, but it's still a council decision. Anyways, it's a
And our role
recommendation.
there is it funded or is it not? And how do we make it efficiently funded for
Or
you?
we can
Yeah.
just like do it and then figure out how to fund it later. Next people, oh,
Yeah, I mean, proactive, reactive. That's,
So as far as when we're looking at these dollars, when you build that out though, I mean, it's specific per employee, so I mean, there is turnover in employees and new
Right.
employees coming in, so, I mean, there is some refresh almost that has to be done.
yep, and that's fine. That's just changing a line item. Somebody leaves, or somebody's added in. The key to it is it takes time to build the whole thing out and to understand your entire system as it stands right now. I mean, we might walk into the room and be like, honestly, it looks like there's a lot of separation between the bottom and top. Have you ever thought about doing it this way? In which you kind of addressed that by saying you did a dollar amount last year. That's what that's intended for. Or you have longevity that's not near as comparable to some of these other areas we've seen. Why don't you check this schedule out? I've got a town in southern Indiana that does insane longevity. I mean, insane. I've never seen anything like it. Like, it gets up to 28% of their comp. And I was like, I don't know how you guys do that. It's crazy. But they have tons of 30-year people because of that. Tons of tenure.
Just to clarify, you said it'd be 10 to 15,000 to set it up.
To build that
Then how would that then translate to an increase in what we're paying already?
It would just be
Every year?
one time for the project, and
then
then,
it would go-
and the other one stays the way it is. I would set it up as a separate engagement. Yeah, and then
So
it
our
would,
regular
yeah, and then it wouldn't be
contract
billed
price would
again.
stay the same.
Yeah, yeah, your other contract does not change.
Okay, but then you would automatically include that every
Yeah.
year in the budget.
Yeah, it would be in this book. Yep.
Once it's built out, it's just the dollars that build it out.
I'm just making sure that I understand.
I've got at least 100 hours of extra work that goes into building that, if not more. That it's a lot. I
I
mean,
just wanted to make sure, because right now we're relying on,
Yeah,
and I don't know if
because
every
she's not
other
running for
county-
reelection.
No, I didn't run for reelection.
Well, let's go a step further. You said 10 to 15,000, right?
that's right where we're hitting right now.
10, or is it gonna be 15?
Let me look
Depends on
at.
how complicated our system is.
Can I get you that answer after I look at our billing system?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the other question is, most
I should have it,
counties
sure.
have, I mean, is it normal for payroll to go through the auditor's office?
Well, this isn't us taking the payroll over. We don't
No,
want
I
to.
understand. That's
Oh,
not
oh,
what I
okay,
mean.
all right. Is it normal? I've seen payroll done in the auditor's office the majority of the time. I've also seen payroll starting to be outsourced to things like Paycor or ADP, things like that. But if you have Lao software, what do you guys use? Lao. There is a connection issue to ADP. I do know that. I've got a lot of Lao clients that you
No,
have
I
to.
wasn't
Okay.
promoting outsourcing. No,
Okay,
no, no.
okay, okay.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it falls under HR, sometimes it falls under auditor. In the.
I've
out
got
there, it's
two-
never under an auditor.
2 or 3 clients that have HR directors and they do not do payroll, but they keep track of the matrix systems. They keep track of these
Okay,
types of
that's
things.
what I wondered. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So, no, I don't see a lot of counties doing it. I see a lot of municipalities, cities and towns doing it though. So,
Okay.
great questions.
Assuming based on this slide, you're just using the 77 fund as a guideline, we have no employees in the county that would fall under the 77 police retirement pension fund.
You don't have, so your sheriff's department's on retirement. Yeah, okay. I can build that in too. They have like a 457 fund. Is that what that's called? Yep, okay. Do you have civilian here? Civilian perf? Okay, good. Okay. That's fine. A lot of counties don't. A lot of counties don't. The sheriff's departments are set up as retirement.
Northwest Fire Territory does.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
That's why I was asking, make sure it's
It can save money that way, to be honest about it. I mean, I know you guys have to fund the retirement through a big line item, and still have to take care of that piece of it, but the 457 fund is different than the 77 fund because the 77 fund continues to grow, and then you have to decide on whether you want to do the employee or employer match, and how that's set up. I think it's going to all the way up to close to 22 or 24% this year, I mean, combined. It's pretty high, might be 25. So I don't know what your retirement program looks like, so I don't mean to jump the gun on that, but it's usually pretty good, though. It's usually pretty good, though, right? It's like your top 5 highest years is based on how your retirement build-out is? Okay. That's how most of them are. So, and so that's not going to change. That's not going to change.
77 fund is based on 50% of the base patrolman salary.
Yeah.
For the community.
Yes.
But they do get COLA raises within theirs. County Sheriff's Department is getting COLA raises.
In the way that program is. Yeah. Which is why everybody wants to get their base patrolman up.
Security, 77 fund people do not. They don't take Social Security from them based on their salary.
Gotcha. The only thing in the retirement one that would be interesting is getting the list of information on how to break that down by employee that's still here. So that would be one of the tasks inside of the hours involved in building that program out. So, but yeah, no, it's in the civilian side, it's pretty easy. Do you guys pay for your civilian employee share of perf, or do you guys know? You probably know that. They pay for their share? Okay. Everybody does it different, so.
Can I chime in just for a second?
Sure, Jim.
Yep.
Hey, just to clear the record here, the sheriff's department's not on the 77 retirement fund. We're in the sheriff's retirement, and it's the average of your highest 3 years,
3 years.
not the base salary such as the 77 fund. Just so everyone's not confused. That, like your city police, they're on the 77 fund. I think the fire as well. Sheriff's office is a little bit unique in that regard.
Right.
We're self-funded there on that end. So it's the highest 3 years.
Jim, Jim,
Yeah.
Tony clarified that, but he didn't have a microphone in front of him, so you probably weren't hearing it.
No, I couldn't hear it. Sorry about that.
Oh,
We're on the same page. Yeah, we're on the same page.
Oh, just grab a mic.
No problem.
I don't need one. I mean, we're done, I think. Aren't we done?
Depending on how fast we got the information and worked to get it, probably within 2 weeks. Probably, I mean, that's pushing it, but I'd say it takes a little bit of time. So 2 to 3 weeks tops. Just have to work some extra
Are
hours.
you thinking potentially for this year, for the budget for next year? Potentially for this year.
That would be at minimum 2 weeks.
But in
I'm just
other
gonna
words,
tell
you
you.
think you could have it done to prepare us for the budget for?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, the wheel's invented. The wheel's invented. The first time we did it, we had to do it a bunch of work to build it on our end, on our dime, right? And then we started to roll it out once it worked.
But to
So-
do that, you would need the commissioners to engage in another contract for that?
It's entirely up to you. I don't remember how our last contract set up. I think we have it set up to where you have your standard scope of service and then you have a fixed component to that. I would just send you a memorandum of fixed contract, like not gonna exceed this amount, and then you
Okay.
guys could do that if you want. Depends on how you guys do it locally.
Okay.
So I just need to set it up as a separate engagement.
It's a
Mike's ready to make a
negotiation.
deal over there.
He's negotiating hard. Let me see if I can get it done for that. We'll see. But let me look at what we've been doing on the last 3. We're working on 3 or 4 of them right now for counties, so it's not. The hardest part is getting the information all tuned up, getting us educated on the information, right? Making sure we're putting the right information in. We'll be back and forth with likely the auditor's office quite a bit, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page before it kind of rolls out. And then the biggest piece is connecting it to the financial plan. That's another really challenging task because you have to code it all in. And if it's not done right, it won't capture 100% of it. But we just finished one down south. I mean, 2 weeks is probably fair, right?
Yeah, once we understand,
Once we have the data.
once we have the data and understand.
Yeah. Fairly automated once it gets going, but
So sorry,
I said, I've got to sneak out for another meeting.
I have to go too.
I'm sorry.
So, as far as next steps,
These,
we're,
these.
Well, I definitely want you guys
oh,
to,
he told us, it's in there.
yeah,
Oh,
Back one.
I definitely want you guys to look at the binder, look at the capital improvement program. When you go all the way to the back, not the capital improvement funds necessarily, but the capital improvement plan. And if you look at that, it kind of works backwards. So your summary's on top, and then the next like 10 pages are going to be all the line items in the funds that they're allocated to. And then you're going to get to a different looking page. I'll just tell you what page it starts on. How's that sound? It is going to start on page 8, and you're going to have the department requested information. So those are the areas where we took the notes of what did we get requested for. Anything in green is funded, anything in red is not. And then, like I said, it kind of works backwards. So it goes from the minute details of what was requested up to where are we going to allocate it, what funds have the legal funding authority to fund this stuff, up to the summary. So look at that stuff. If we really want to get a few more things in there, try to get 100% of it taken care of, we can certainly start to look in those areas. Or if anything changes, obviously roads and bridges are going to be very, very fluid. There's things year over year that need to change there. So we'll, or if we don't get the 1.5 million, if we don't get a grant, things like that, we can adjust. So check in on that. Once that's done, that's your capital budget for 25 in those funds. That's what we should see on the Form 1s. In theory, it's not always that way, but that's what we should see. And I know the department heads that are on this are, I think, all on this meeting right now. So if there's anything I've left out, we need to try and find a home for, definitely let us know as well. So from there, once that's done, the capital part's done, then we would focus on, you've got till basically, I think June 30th is your request for Form 1s, is that correct? Okay, sometimes people do it earlier. Once you get those Form 1s, we drop it into the budget book itself, which is integrated into this as well. And then we can go in and start showing you guys variances, and if you wanted to see that model built into that, that's where that would happen. So it wouldn't be till after June 30th anyways. We would also need the June 30th financial ledger. So you got 6 weeks. Got 6 weeks to kind of start going through that stuff. Probably, if we were involved in another meeting like we talked about, coming in and kind of going over the budget book and the financial plan together, I think that would be, or maybe that salary compensation thing, I think that would be somewhere in that, I don't know, mid-July maybe, early August, before you do your probably early August. I think that's what you wrote down on that. Yeah, so that would be before that department meeting. Give you a week or so to at least take the information and ask questions. Think about it. I can send that information to you in an Excel format that you guys can use on like your iPads if you have those, and you can put notes down on them. And I'll have it in a printable version as well. And basically, when you sit with your department heads, you can go through and you can say, okay, capital was requested at this in the CAP plan. It's different here. Here's what we're thinking on compensation. Here's what you wrote down, stuff like that. So the idea is fund your budget before you ever get there. The
Would
budget
you guys
season.
come up here for that meeting, that brief, like little workshop before the workshop?
I think so. I think that would be the one you'd want us at.
Yeah.
Kind of our assessment of revenues, and things are going to change between now and then with, we may get some income tax data, probably not. That's usually October, but we'll be able to update with financial ledgers, have some more updated information on revenues. Again, we're conservative, so I feel like what's in there now is probably going to be pretty good for budget season.
Would there be any additional fees for those additional meetings?
Nope. That's part of the standard package. No, and I'll always let you guys know if we're going to charge anything extra or have to charge anything extra, I'm going to let you know.
Okay.
Yeah, so. Yes, sir. Capital improvement plan? Community Crossings Grant Fund is in Community Crossings. No, you see the blue? See the blue highlight, Community Crossings Grant Fund right there? That's the fund. Anytime that blue comes up, that's the individual fund. So that would be the amount we would get from the state. It would, do you have local road and bridge matching grant fund? So you pay it directly out of the funds? I think we're supposed to do it. Mm-hmm. Does it all go into one fund? Yeah, that's what that would be. I don't know what it's called, though. I need to change my name here on this. Perfect. It's like you're saying, it's like the bridge funds, how we do yep, that's how we need to do it.
So we can track, because the State Board of Accounts wants us.
Exactly.
And they want to have a separate fund so they can track it.
Yep.
But no, if they want to pay Community Crossings out of that, I'm all for it.
It's not out of edit here. That's just the I called it the Community Crossings Grant Fund. Yeah. Oh, okay. I got you. Yeah, yeah. And then your match is down below that in that wheel tax like we discussed, so.
What is the last date of the budget has to be advertised?
I don't have that calendar right in front of me. Do you have it in front of you?
Budget timeline?
No, advertised. The state's
Okay.
requirement. I could tell you. I mean, I can look it up real quick. The state advertised number is what you're asking for statute-wise? Okay, I'll look it up.
Steve, when I look at that $51 million there, you're quite the cost center there.
But he's doing such good work.
You know what I'm talking about, the state's page? We just put in the number, or had
Dwarf
in the,
everybody else's budget.
He thinks he's important.
yeah, I'm talking about the memos and presentations budget. I'm looking it up. My phone's got some signal. Memos. There's a statutory budget timeline they put out every single year. And it, does it say the deadline on it?
Statutory deadline is within 5 business days of adoption, Friday, October 11th is what we have here.
For the publication,
That's the
publication though. Publication, yeah. That's what I think that's what you just asked, right?
I have Sunday, September 1st, obviously, you'll do it before.
So that Friday before. Here it is. Gateway submission calendar.
Gee, it's on your two-sheeter.
It is. The
Sunday,
statute's on there.
September 1st, Deadline for units to submit.
Tyler
Proposed
just
2020,
told me.
right here. Good job. Preemptive.
Yep, and I just verified it on the DLGS calendar, so, but we won't do it on a Sunday, just probably a bad idea since the I don't know, do you guys have newspapers still that run here, or is it all online? January 126, we don't have to do additionals anymore in newspapers, so that'll save some money. We still have to do additionals, but not in the newspaper, we can, yeah, right.
That'll put the papers out of business.
Honestly, the legal advertisements, it probably will.
Couple questions I guess I have on some TIFs. I know there's a couple substantial projects being proposed in the county. Some are in TIFs, some aren't currently. Can you do any of those forecasts? I mean, if we have a client coming in or have a potential company wanting to come in and can give us some sort of an idea of the investment they're gonna make in that TIF?
Yeah.
And, because I know that there's a couple that could be substantial, I mean, as much as the one they're even talking about $1 billion investment.
Right, and a lot of times what we'll do is, and for communities, is when they have something like that coming in, you may be getting numbers from them directly that might not actually be, so we'll compare it to comparative analyses around the state to kind of get a real assessment base, and then we'll give you kind of a net projection on revenue. That way you have a negotiating tool whenever you go to the table. So those aren't hard to do.
Because the one is a possible data center, you know, so I mean, you're talking about a whole bunch of investment that's
Yep.
electronics that, you know, they may only have it on a 3 or 5 year personal property tax
Right.
depreciation. So I mean, it's gonna, you know, if we do some sort of abatement by the end of that, it's like, the
Well,
assessed value is like gone.
And hopefully the legislature doesn't attack personal property in the future again. So they're doing stuff on salt taxes this year, so.
So I guess I'm just trying to, as we have a couple of those, you know, currently that we're having discussions with, but I know as we get further down the road, that's something that, you know, I think having some expertise to be able to, like you said, kind of compare the numbers, you know, because I'm sure
Yeah.
they're gonna show what is the best case scenario.
And we might use 80% of that,
Right.
right? 75% of that for various reasons, but we'll at least be able to substantiate it.
And I know we talked a little bit about this the last time, and we never really came up with a good answer. The other thing that we're seeing is there's a lot of potential for these projects happening adjacent to a small community or even Warsaw, which, I mean, depending on where you're at, that's even considered small. But, and they, you know, they annex the property because they need sewer, they need water, whatever, you know, but I also know that they're asking how can the county be more of a development partner in some of these projects as they're moving forward. And I know we talked a little bit about this the last time. Most of these would be in a TIF area, but I'm just trying to sort out ways that if the county is going to participate in some way with infrastructure improvements or that process, that the county could get some reimbursement. So there's some sort of a payback for the county. So we're getting an ROI on the investment we're making in infrastructure to make a project happen versus, you know, we let the community or the city annex it and, you know, we're stuck at whatever the pre-development tax rate was and, you know, we're getting 10 cents and they're getting $20.
Right, when you have a significant investment in that area is what you're saying?
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
I realize if we don't do an investment in it, I mean, we shouldn't be able to partake. But at the same
Yeah.
token, if we're helping, because I know the city, especially with so many things we're talking about with with the Ori money and some of the Craig Snow projects that could really be needing the city and the county to team up together to really make some of these things happen.
Right.
And I just want it to be, I'm looking for a mechanism to where there's some parity in how whoever's making the investment or proportionately, that there's some return. Ideally, I'd love it to be some ongoing tax revenue that, okay, we're using some of our cash reserves currently, but that's gonna pay us dividends from now till ever, you know?
Yeah, and so conceptually, and I'm not an attorney, but I think the laws are pretty clear on what you would see in like a local agreement and for like a payment in lieu of type payment. If a development, this might be creative and new to do it this way, and I would consult legal for sure as far as statutes go. But if you were to do some sort of, hey, this development we invested X in, we're not looking for a complete ROI on this, but we want to get a better benefit than 10 cents on the dollar. Could we do an agreement for a payment in lieu of this amount based on this formula from the growth you receive off that development? That type of thing is probably the most reasonable approach to it. I think I might have mentioned something like that, but you're kind of going down a legal road, and at that point, you're starting to get more of like a local policy or agreement between the two entities. So, and that's all it
I'm
really
really
is.
trying to, you know, we have these cash reserves that we've built up, and I don't want
Right.
to just spend them and not have them be replenished so we can do this again
Yeah.
2 years down the road.
Right? I mean, that's an option for sure, but both parties would have to come to the table ready to participate. You know, if you got a big heck no, we're going to take all the benefit from it. I don't know what legally we can do to recoup an investment, so that's why you want to have that negotiation before you go, I guess you go to spend the money, so.
And I guess I just know that, you know, there's going to be those opportunities, and I'm just trying to have some sort of tools in our toolbox that we know what's available out there that we can have those conversations. Because it's, you know, I'm not trying to be adversary to growth in the community, but at the same token, I also don't want to just keep giving away the you know, future tax revenues for the county that we're not, you know, the county's portion of everything that we're getting keeps getting smaller.
Right.
As the communities around us, you know, absorb some of that area that's being currently in our tax district.
I mean, what's the alternative for them if you don't invest?
Well,
Not do it?
Either the city or the developer has to come up with more money on their own.
Right, so they would have to go through a development bond process or something like that where they assume a relationship with them instead of you guys. So I think it's totally fair to have a local agreement in place if you're going to cash flow this type of thing. I mean, alternatively, and this is like a last resort, if the other party wouldn't want to work with you at all, you have control over the income tax structure. You could recoup funds that way, but it's gonna hit other communities other than just the one that you're negotiating with.
Yeah, and we want to, you know, we're trying to build rapport with all these small communities and with the
Right.
city of Warsaw. That, I mean, what's good for Kosciuszko, it's good for them. It, long-term, is good for Kosciuszko.
Right,
I mean,
right,
All
yeah.
those communities are in Kosciuszko County, so we need to make sure that.
I wouldn't do that approach then, yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to build camaraderie, not
Right.
draw up the lines, but, and the last thing, and I know this one's a little bit of a hot button, but since I don't think there's any media here talking about, but I know.
Do I need to push my button?
Yeah. Long-term, you know, we're making some investments in our airport as far as we're doing that through some of our edit funds. You know, they're pretty much the airport's coming to us with a particular project, and we're looking to fund those projects. I know a year or so ago, there was some talk of an airport authority, or making that more of a county-wide scenario. And I know just trying to always have those numbers that work to compare, you know, versus, you know, the people that are pro, making sure we've got that double check. Is that something that you guys have looked at? I mean, that we could really look at how that would impact our county?
I'm doing an airport authority right now for a client for the same reason. I'm not directly, one of my partners is, but yeah, I mean, it's a statutory process, and whether it benefits you or not is going to be, you know, really up to you guys once you see the information and the facts we'd provide.
I mean, I'm not questioning what they presented to us the last time, but it's just one of those things that's always good to have, you know, just like legal counsel, that you don't use somebody else's attorney's legal counsel. You want your own to look at it and look through it.
Would you be the governing body in that?
What's that?
Would you be the governing body in the airport authority, the council or the county?
We can't be now.
You can't, I mean, because it would go to the municipality in that case, wouldn't it? Would it be Warsaw?
The board would split 3 and 3.
Right.
So you'd have appointments.
Yeah.
It'd be
Yeah.
split 50/50, at least as they presented it to us. Yeah.
See, the one I'm working on is inside of a city. So it's literally just the city, and then you have one county council member, I believe, on it, which I thought was light. So,
And I guess the thing that I see with, you know, we've got some funds we're able to do project by project, and I think that's more
What the appetite.
appetizing to the bulk of the county to kind of do it that way. But I know long-term, you know, that they've got a little more of a consistent known budget. I'm sure that's something they're going to continue to come at us with. And I guess I just don't want to limit our ability to grow and, you know, leverage that asset. Because you know, I think some people don't realize how big of an asset that is to our whole community.
right.
That, you know, to be honest, I mean, the city's been carrying the water on that. So, and we've just been the benefactor of, you know, and I'm not suggesting we got to do that right away, but just, it's all things that I think are going through my mind long-term. I'm trying to solve some of these problems that could really have long-lasting impact.
Sure. I love it. Staying ahead of the game. That's something, I mean, yeah, when you go down that road, if it's something you want to look at the financial aspects of it, or even building in like a fund type plan for that, it's easy to do.
I mean, currently, we put it in our edit spending plan to
Right.
continue to do some of these projects for them as they bring a specific project, you know, and we're able to leverage the dollars they're either getting from the state or from their own revenue generated there. So
Do they generate good revenue off fuel and stuff like that?
Not bad. It's not what it
Hangars.
used to be. You know, I think, you know, some of those struggles, they're trying to fix that with some of the runway, well, actually lowering power lines. They've got some power lines that are really close to the end of the runway that limits how much fuel some of the jets can even have. So they're losing fuel sales just
Yeah.
because of they have to shorten the runway because of the power lines that are there, and they're doing it's like a $7 or $8 million power line lowering currently. But I know that there's going to be, if they want to extend the runway, there's going to have to be some sort of a 100 East is going to have to be taken under or around or something. And what does that look like? And it is currently a county road, so.
Large infrastructure improvements, yeah.
Because there's definitely some pretty major ones that are hanging around out there. You know, it's just with this ORI funds and some of those others that, you know, we have an IDD district that's been talked about to the west. You know, and you know that would be it's currently all in the county, but it's going to need to have sewers. That's back to one of those we're trying to how do we team up with the city of Warsaw, but as we would move forward, we don't just let the city of Warsaw annex all that. We're actually able to recoup some of that revenues for the future. Because I mean, that's the big thing that I'm trying to do is making sure we're keeping strong revenues for the county long term.
And Carrie, that's also important because if you consider the city's tax rate, we're losing money,
Right.
not just tax dollars. But because of the tax structure, we're still losing money.
Yeah, and the sad part of it is we're losing money, but now they're not losing as much money in their cap. So I mean, every little bit we give up, they gobble up because they're at a tax cap. So I mean, it's not
Yeah, they're reducing their tax cap and they're getting more income tax.
right. So I mean, that 12% we gave up in our tax rate, they got it all.
Yeah.
So I mean, thank you. But, so I mean, it's one of those things that I think sometimes you forget all that. And not that the city of Warsaw hasn't done a lot of heavy lifting for our community, and we have so much to be thankful for of what they've invested in and how it's made our community more quality of life oriented, that people want to live here. Because, we talk about the tax rate, but then you stop and you look at the census and where the population growth was. I mean, 98% of the growth was in the town of Winona Lake and the city of Warsaw. I mean, our county, if you look at the county itself, we're on the brink of going the other way. That.
Too many farmers buying houses and burning them down.
So it's one of those things that, you know, I know some people struggle with quality of life investments, but if you look where all the people are going, it's where the quality of life investments are being made. Because I know that there's some pushback on park and rec and some of that stuff, and I know a lot of these I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's if we want to attract people to live in this community or in our county, we've got to continue to make investments in areas, I would say historically, we've not been as excited about doing, excuse me. We have such natural, you talk about our AV value, you look at, you know, the area we have around our lakes, I don't think people realize the value that brings to this community. That's the reason we have the tax rate we do. I mean, not to take away of what the council or the commissioners have done historically, but when you have that kind of assessed value in a rural area that's used 6 months out of the year, you know, realistically around a lot of those lake homes, I mean, and they're second homes, so they don't, a lot of them don't have
And they have the 2% cap instead of the 1% cap, yeah.
So I mean, it's all
They're
those-
paying more.
Right, all
Yeah.
those add up to us having the revenues we do. You know, we're blessed. That's all. That's
Very
all
much.
That's all we can say. So, but we want to make sure we're being good stewards of that. And how can we promote that? I mean, with the sewer we're putting around the lakes and some of those things, you know, I think we're going to continue to see more construction around the lakes and that stuff happens.
I'll bring my boat next time and go fishing.
Yeah.
I park a little boat out here, no?
Thank you.
No, thank you,
Sorry-
guys.
Sorry, my soapbox there.
No, I passionate. I'm behind that. I mean, we can help you stay proactive and definitely look at all those, so. Do I need?
Yeah, I need 2 books, one for Dave.
There's 2 right there.
Give you 2. I got 3 right here.
That's Tony's, but I need one
Yep.
for Dave.
Here you go.
And Kim. Thanks, you guys, it was really good. So, yeah, so we still have some things to figure out, but I don't think there's anything. That we had.
We're not IT.
Yeah. So, did you find it?